Why did Roswell's rapid retraction ignite lasting extraterrestrial conspiracy theories? How did Cold War security anxieties shape governments' systematic UFO investigations? On a still night under a moonless sky, the world below lies in quiet darkness. Stars shimmer overhead, distant and familiar, and usually nothing disturbs the serene canvas of the heavens. But every so often, a light appears where no star should be, a pale orb gliding silently, or a cluster of sparks that move with purpose. In those moments, anyone gazing upward might feel a flutter of wonder or unease. For as long as humans have watched the night sky, there have been stories of strange lights that defy explanation, tiny beacons of mystery amid the blanket of stars. Generations ago, before the modern era of flight, people sometimes whispered of peculiar sights above. Medieval chronicles tell of heavenly wonders, glowing globes, fiery shapes, even aerial ships that appeared and vanished without a trace. Often these tales were cloaked in superstition or faith, seen as omens from the gods or wayward spirits. As time went on, and science cast new light on old fears, many eerie sky glows were explained away as comets streaking through the atmosphere or planets twinkling unusually bright. Yet even into the 20th century, not everything seen in the sky found a comfortable explanation. There remained a residue of sightings, those elusive lights in the night, that left witnesses searching for answers in vain. During the dark days of the Second World War, when eyes turned skyward in vigilance, some pilots witnessed something utterly unexpected. In the midst of tense night missions over Europe and the Pacific, Allied airmen began reporting that glowing balls of light would appear out of nowhere to trail their aircraft. These luminous orbs, often orange or red, and seemingly under intelligent control, would pace the planes and dance around them with uncanny agility. The baffled pilots nicknamed them Foo Fighters, borrowing a nonsense term from a comic strip as a wry coping mechanism for their apprehension. Imagine a crew flying through a cold, black night at high altitude. Suddenly bright lights pop into view off the wingtip, keeping speed with the bomber and mimicking every turn. No enemy aircraft are visible, and in an era before modern drones, nothing known should have been able to move like that. The Foo Fighters did not attack. They simply shadowed the Allied planes for minutes at a time before peeling away into the darkness. They never showed up on the radar screens, as if they were made of light itself rather than solid matter. Pilots who landed after these encounters were left rattled and amazed, unsure whether they had seen a new enemy weapon, or something not of this earth at all. Their superiors took notice of the reports, but answers were scarce. In secret, intelligence officers mulled possibilities. Could these glowing pursuers be a German invention? Perhaps some advanced aircraft, or a psychological warfare trick? Some scientists proposed natural explanations like St. Elmo's fire, a known weather phenomenon where electrical charge creates a ghostly glow around plane wingtips. But those familiar with St. Elmo's fire doubted it could bob and weave in formation as the Foo Fighters had. Others wondered if pilot fatigue or combat stress-induced imagination was to blame. Yet the sightings were often reported by multiple crews on the same night, their descriptions eerily consistent. News of the Foo Fighters eventually made it into newspapers back home, splashed across headlines on New Year's Day of 1945, and provoking public curiosity. The US Army Air Command quietly dispatched investigators to some night fighter units to gather more information. Even the top brass and scientists were intrigued by the consistent accounts. But the war ended before any definitive explanation emerged. By 1946, official reports on the wartime ghost flyers were filed away and largely forgotten, having yielded no clear answers. Whatever danced in those wartime skies remained unresolved. The only certainty for the airmen who saw those phantom lights was the unsettling feeling that something unknown had shared the sky with them, watching silently from the darkness. A few short years later, with the world at peace, new mysteries in the heavens would capture global attention. In the summer of 1947, ordinary people across America began witnessing inexplicable things in broad daylight and clear night skies alike. They reported odd, metallic disks zipping through the clouds and bright lights zigzagging across the horizon. It seemed that whatever strange presence had haunted the wartime nights was not finished with humanity. One sunny afternoon in late June of that year, a private pilot named Kenneth Arnold was flying his small plane over the Cascade Mountains in Washington state. The air was calm and the sky crystal clear as Arnold searched the wilderness below for any sign of a missing marine transport plane rumored to have crashed. Suddenly, a brilliant flash caught his eye, as if sunlight had glinted off a mirror in the sky. Startled, he looked around for its source. There, to his astonishment, Arnold spotted a chain of unfamiliar objects speeding in formation past Mount Rainier. By his account, 9 silvery shapes were hurtling through the air in a diagonal line, weaving between mountain peaks and keeping an impossible pace. He later estimated their speed at well over 1,000 miles per hour, far beyond any aircraft of the era. Each object gleamed with a blue-white sheen and occasionally flipped onto its side as it flew, catching the sun and flashing brightly. Their motion was unlike anything he had ever seen. Arnold likened it to the way a saucer might skip across water, skimming in a strange, bobbing glide. For roughly half a minute he watched, astonished, as the formation of unknown craft darted southward. Within moments, they disappeared beyond the distant ridge of Mount Adams, leaving the veteran pilot rubbing his eyes and wondering if his mind had played tricks. When Kenneth Arnold finally landed and recounted his experience, word spread quickly. Here was a credible, level-headed pilot, not someone given to exaggeration, insisting he had seen craft of unknown origin defying the known limits of speed and flight. Local newspapers eagerly picked up the story, and from there it flashed across the nation on news wires. As Arnold's account hit headlines, something about it sparked the public's imagination. All at once, similar sightings began pouring in from every corner of the country. Clearly, Arnold was not the only person seeing strange things overhead. People described shiny disks or crescent-shaped objects darting about, and bright lights performing dramatic maneuvers against the stars. It seemed the skies were suddenly alive with mysteries. In the midst of this excitement, an editor coined a catchy name for Arnold's airborne anomalies: flying saucers. The phrase captivated the public, even though Arnold hadn't literally reported saucer-shaped craft. He had only compared their motion to saucers skimming on water. Nevertheless, flying saucer became the buzzword for any uncanny object seen streaking through the sky. Throughout the summer of 1947, many Americans took to scanning the skies at dusk, half expecting to catch a glimpse of a silvery disk or wandering lights. A sense of mystery, even anticipation, gripped the country. Were these sightings mere illusions or misidentified airplanes? Or could they be evidence that someone, or something, was observing our world from above? The wave of UFO sightings was only beginning, and it was about to take an even more dramatic turn. In the weeks following Arnold's encounter, one particular incident unfolded that would transform a local curiosity into an enduring national legend. Not long after the flying saucer craze ignited, a quiet ranching region in New Mexico became the scene of a baffling encounter, one that, for many, marked the true beginning of the modern mystery of visitors from the sky. What happened on that remote prairie would fuel speculation for decades to come. That quiet ranching region in New Mexico was near the small town of Roswell. On a remote sheep ranch out on the high desert plains, A foreman named Mac Brazel rode out one morning in early July 1947 to check his fields after a night of thunderstorms. In a lonely pasture, Brazel came upon a baffling scene. Pieces of strange debris were scattered everywhere, as if some object had exploded high above. He climbed down from his horse and walked among the fragments, trying to make sense of them. There were strips of rubbery material and lengths of brittle, lightweight sticks. Shiny foil-like sheets lay strewn across the sand, catching the morning sun. When he picked one up, it was unlike any metal he knew, thin as paper, yet oddly resilient. Brazel would later say that when he crumpled one of the foil pieces in his hand, it unfolded itself back to a flat shape without a crease, almost as if it had a memory. He had lived on that ranch for years, and was familiar with weather balloons and their instruments occasionally falling to earth. But this looked nothing like any weather device he'd seen. Perplexed, he gathered up a few pieces of the wreckage and carried them home. In the days that followed, Brazel heard people in town buzzing about flying saucers. Tales of strange discs seen in the sky were all over the newspapers. At first, he wasn't sure what to do with his discovery. But the more he thought about it, the more he wondered if these curious scraps on his property could be related to the mysterious saucers everyone was talking about. On July 6th, Brazel travelled into Roswell and reported what he had found to the local sheriff. The sheriff, equally intrigued and cautious, contacted the nearby Army airfield. Roswell Army Airfield was no ordinary base. It was home to the 509th Bomb Group, the only unit in the world at that time equipped with atomic bombs. If something had fallen from the sky onto a ranch just miles away, the military wanted to know about it immediately. An Army intelligence officer from the base, Major Jesse Marcel, was sent out to Brazel's ranch to investigate, accompanied by another officer. They followed Brazel back to the lonely pasture, where under the hot sun he showed them the shallow gully still littered with foil, rubber strips, wooden sticks, and pieces of what looked like tough parchment paper. Major Marcel knelt and picked up a fragment of the strange foil. Like Brazel, he was struck by how thin and light it was, yet how it resisted tearing or creasing. As the two officers spread out to collect as much of the debris as they could, they noted that the material was spread over a wide area, as if whatever broke up had disintegrated in mid-air, peppering the ground with its remains. They loaded their jeeps with crates of the odd wreckage and headed back to the base as night fell. The next morning, July 8th, 1947, the Roswell Army Airfield made a startling public announcement. The base's public information officer issued a press release stating that personnel from the 509th Bomb Group had recovered a flying disc on a ranch in the Roswell vicinity. Within hours, news of the Army's sensational claim raced across the nation. Radio stations and newspapers interrupted regular programming with bulletins. The US military had a flying saucer in its possession. For a brief moment, it seemed the mystery of the strange lights in the sky might have a truly astonishing answer. At the Roswell Daily Record, reporters hurried to get the story to print, envisioning the dawn of a new era. Perhaps evidence of visitors from another world had literally fallen into their laps. But the excitement was short-lived. Later that same day, the Army's story changed dramatically. Higher-ranking officers at Fort Worth Army Airfield in Texas, the regional headquarters, weighed in on the find from Roswell. Brigadier General Roger Ramey, the commander, invited the press to see the material that had been recovered. Photographers snapped pictures of Major Marcel himself, kneeling among pieces of debris spread on an office floor, metallic-looking foil, broken wooden beams, and fragments of rubber. General Ramey announced that upon examination, the debris was nothing exotic at all. It was, he said, simply the remains of a conventional weather balloon and its reflective kite, not a flying disc from an alien spacecraft. To drive the point home, the army provided a straightforward explanation. The wreckage looked unusual at first, but it was actually a torn balloon, outfitted with a radar target made of foil and sticks, the type used in high-altitude weather monitoring. This abrupt reversal left many scratching their heads. Just yesterday, the military itself had declared a captured flying saucer. Now they were emphatically identifying it as a mundane weather balloon. In Roswell, the initial euphoria gave way to confusion and disappointment. Some local residents quietly questioned why experienced army officers would have mistaken balloon fragments for a saucer in the first place. Major Marcel, following orders, went along with the official account in public, but years later he would hint that the materials he picked up on that ranch had been unlike any weather balloon components he'd ever seen. Meanwhile, Mac Brazel, the rancher at the center of it all, found himself swarmed by reporters, and then, according to some accounts, whisked away by the military for a few days. When he reappeared, Brazel echoed the army's line, telling a newspaper that he must have simply found a weather balloon. Still, those who knew him said he seemed uneasy, as if he wasn't entirely convinced by the explanation he was now giving. In private, Brazel reportedly later confided regret for ever reporting what he found. After the Army's official statement, the Roswell incident quickly faded from the headlines. With tensions of the early Cold War rising, the world moved on. The crash on Brazel's ranch was chalked up as a misunderstanding, and there were no further public inquiries. For decades, the story of the supposed flying saucer in New Mexico remained little more than a forgotten footnote. But that quiet burial was not the end of the Roswell mystery, far from it. In the late 1970s, long after Brazel had passed away, Roswell would rise again to capture the world's imagination. That was when Major Jesse Marcel, by then retired, gave an interview claiming that the weather balloon explanation had been a cover story. He implied that what he had recovered back in 1947 was not of earthly origin. Marcel's words lit a spark that quickly grew into a bonfire of speculation. Other witnesses and second-hand sources emerged, telling fantastical tales of additional crash sites, alien bodies being recovered and whisked off to secret morgues, and a massive government cover-up to hide the truth. The Roswell incident transformed into a cornerstone of UFO legend. Authors wrote sensational books, alleging that extraterrestrial spacecraft had indeed crashed in the New Mexico desert, and that the government had been studying the recovered alien technology in secret ever since. The term Roswell became synonymous with cosmic conspiracy. For many, Roswell now symbolized the ultimate government secret, proof, in their eyes, of an extraordinary cover-up. In response to the growing public intrigue, the US Air Force eventually conducted an internal investigation in the 1990s and released reports to clarify the facts. According to those reports, the material recovered in 1947 was debris from a top-secret program called Project Mogul, specialized balloons designed to detect Soviet nuclear tests, hence all the secrecy at the time. They even suggested that later recollections of alien bodies might have been confused memories of test dummies dropped from high-altitude experiments years after 1947. To skeptics, these official explanations confirmed that nothing otherworldly had happened at Roswell. But to those who believed, it all sounded like just another layer of cover-up. Even today, the debate over Roswell remains unresolved in the public mind. On summer nights, under the vast New Mexico sky, tourists still visit the area, gazing up and imagining what might have occurred in that quiet field so many years ago. Did a craft from another world really fall to Earth, only to be hushed up by authorities? Or was it merely human technology misunderstood and magnified by rumor? Whatever the truth, Roswell marked the beginning of an enduring mystery, one that cemented the idea that perhaps we are indeed being watched by someone, somewhere beyond our world. The end of the 1940s did little to quell the mystery in the skies. If anything, The sightings of unknown lights and flying saucers only multiplied as the Cold War began. Military officials in the United States and in other countries found themselves grappling with an uncomfortable question. Were these unexplained objects a threat to national security, perhaps advanced aircraft from a rival nation? Or were they something even more outlandish? In the tense atmosphere of the Cold War, nothing could be taken lightly. And so, quietly and cautiously, governments started to watch the skies more intently than ever. In the US, the Air Force launched a series of projects to systematically collect and analyze UFO reports. The first effort, in 1948, was called Project Sign. At that time, waves of sightings were being reported by civilians and military personnel alike. Some within Project Sign considered the astounding possibility that at least a few sightings might be vehicles from another world, an idea laid out in a bold intelligence estimate that was circulated to top brass. According to later recollections, this secret estimate argued that the craft spotted by reliable witnesses did not seem to be American or Soviet, and so extraterrestrial origins had to be considered. However, when this conclusion reached Air Force commanders in the Pentagon, it was met with skepticism and concern. Without concrete proof, the top officials refused to endorse the extraterrestrial theory. The estimate was rejected, and Project Sign was soon replaced by a new, more tightly controlled investigation. By 1949, the Air Force's UFO inquiry had morphed into Project Grudge, a program with a far more skeptical bent. Project Grudge approached the UFO issue with the aim of debunking and dispelling sightings whenever possible. Reports of strange lights were chalked up to stars or weather phenomena. Accounts of fast-moving disks were attributed to aircraft or optical illusions. Analysts under Grudge seemed determined to find a conventional explanation for every case, sometimes stretching logic to do so. The official stance was clear. There was nothing unknown in the skies, at least nothing that should concern the public. Yet even as the Air Force publicly dismissed UFOs, the reports kept coming in. By the early 1950s, sightings were being logged at an astonishing pace. Pilots, both military and commercial, occasionally encountered objects they couldn't identify. Radar operators sometimes tracked blips that moved with uncanny speed or maneuverability, only to vanish. One of the most dramatic episodes unfolded in July 1952 in the skies over the American capital. On a steamy summer night, air traffic controllers at Washington National Airport observed a cluster of unexplained targets on their radar screens. Bright objects were also spotted streaking through the sky over Washington, D.C. Some reports even placed them above the White House. The radar targets darted and then disappeared when fighter jets were scrambled towards them, only to reappear once the jets left. The press had a field day, dubbing it an invasion of the flying saucers. Public anxiety spiked. Behind closed doors, the US government treated the 1952 Washington incidents very seriously. President Harry Truman demanded answers. The Air Force, inundated with UFO reports that year, convened a special panel of scientists in early 1953 to review the phenomenon. Led by physicist Howard Robertson, this CIA-sponsored Robertson panel studied sighting reports, including films and radar data from Washington, to determine if UFOs were a genuine threat or just a mass misperception. After several days of analysis, the Robertson panel concluded that there was no evidence of extraterrestrial spacecraft. Most sightings, they said, could be attributed to prosaic things: misidentified airplanes, weather balloons, astronomical phenomena like meteors, or outright hoaxes. However, the panel did express concern about the public hysteria UFOs could cause. In a quiet recommendation, they advised the government to actively debunk and downplay UFO stories. If people could be made to lose interest, the panel reasoned, any potential for enemy nations to exploit UFO mania for psychological warfare would also diminish. Following this guidance, the Air Force stepped up its public relations efforts to demystify sightings. A new investigative program, Project Blue Book, had actually been launched in 1952 as the successor to Grudge, and now it took center stage. Headquartered at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, Project Blue Book became the clearinghouse for UFO reports for the next 17 years. Air Force officers and scientists catalogued thousands upon thousands of sightings, each case assigned an explanation whenever possible. A great many were resolved. Stars and planets twinkling oddly, flights of birds illuminated by city lights, jets seen head-on appearing as fast-moving points of light, rare cloud formations, and so on. Some were attributed to secret US aircraft tests. For instance, high-altitude spy planes like the U-2 and later the A-12 Oxcart often flew in the stratosphere, far above normal planes, and unwittingly generated UFO reports from observers who had never seen an object so high and fast. In fact, the CIA would later acknowledge that more than half of the unexplained sightings in the late 1950s and early 1960s were due to people spotting the U-2 spy plane before its existence was publicly known. Of course, neither the Air Force nor CIA could reveal that at the time. They couldn't exactly tell a curious witness, "You didn't see a spaceship, it was our secret spy jet," without blowing a classified program. So the mystery sightings were often left to linger, or were given vague explanations, further feeding public speculation. Project Blue Book tried to strike a balance, reassure the public that nothing supernatural was visiting Earth, while quietly investigating those cases that seemed to defy easy explanation. By the end of the 1950s, Blue Book had logged incidents from all over the world. Some were indeed perplexing. Air Force pilots chasing bright lights that outmaneuvered them, objects seen on radar making instantaneous turns, reports from remote regions with multiple trustworthy witnesses. For a handful of sightings, investigators could find no known cause. Those few cases left a door open to the unsettling notion that perhaps something unknown, maybe even alien, was surveying Earth's skies. Even after Project Blue Book was closed, these unresolved incidents continued to haunt those who had studied them. Officially, the Air Force maintained that there was nothing to panic about. Throughout the Cold War, the UFO question intersected oddly with the era's cloak and dagger secrecy. In the Soviet Union, similar sightings were reported, though Soviet authorities generally suppressed public discussion of UFOs. Declassified documents decades later would reveal that Soviet military intelligence quietly collected reports of strange aerial phenomena as well. Both superpowers, it seems, were peering anxiously upward, vigilant not just for each other's bombers and missiles, but for anything truly unknown. In the United States, some locations became especially associated with the UFO mystery and government secrecy. One notorious example is a remote patch of Nevada desert known simply as Area 51. Beginning in the mid-1950s, Area 51 was used as a top-secret test site for cutting-edge military aircraft. It was here that engineers flew the U-2 and later the sleek black SR-71 spy plane, pushing the boundaries of altitude and speed. Locals and airline pilots who glimpsed these strange, silent shapes glinting at extreme heights naturally had no idea what they were, and some reported flying saucers darting above the desert. Over time, the government went to extreme lengths to keep Area 51's activities hidden, even denying the base's existence for decades. This aura of intense secrecy only fueled the belief that authorities knew much more about UFOs than they let on. In later years, conspiracy theories would blossom that Area 51 was where the US government stored crashed alien spacecraft, Roswell's included, some claimed, and was feverishly back-engineering extraterrestrial technology. While those tales remain unproven, the mere fact that such a place existed, a place where even test pilots weren't told what they were flying, convinced many that the government must be hiding alien secrets in the remote Nevada sands. Through the 1960s, Project Blue Book continued its work, but public interest in UFOs ebbed and flowed. By the late 60s, after 2 decades of sightings, the Air Force was under pressure from scientists, and even Congress, to justify the persistence of the UFO study. Were any insights being gained, or was it all a wild goose chase? The Air Force commissioned a group of scientists at the University of Colorado, led by physicist Edward Condon, to independently evaluate the best UFO cases. In 1969, the Condon Committee, as it was known, issued a lengthy report. Their conclusion was blunt. Studying UFOs had not yielded any significant scientific discoveries, and further official investigation was unlikely to be worthwhile. Not long after, Project Blue Book was formally shut down. The Air Force announced that in all its years of collecting reports, it had found no evidence that UFOs were extraterrestrial or a threat to national security. They provided statistics. Out of 12,618 sightings recorded, the vast majority, around 94%, had been explained as misidentifications or natural phenomena. The remaining 6% were labelled unidentified, simply due to insufficient information, not proof of aliens. Case closed, it seemed. But ending the official investigation did not end the mystery. Even as Blue Book closed its doors, dramatic UFO encounters continued to be reported by people around the world, sometimes with multiple witnesses or physical traces like radar readings and photographs. In 1976, for example, 2 Iranian fighter pilots attempted to intercept a luminous object near Tehran that reportedly disabled their instruments, an incident later described in a US Defense Intelligence Agency report. And back in the United States, a future president, Georgia's governor at the time, Jimmy Carter, filed an official report describing a strange multicolored object he had seen in the sky one evening in 1969. Carter, like many others who had seen something unusual, was convinced it was not just a star or aircraft. He even promised during his 1976 presidential campaign to open the government's UFO files if elected, though once in office, his enthusiasm for the topic cooled amid more pressing concerns of state. For all the official dismissals, a small number of military insiders quietly remained intrigued by the unresolved cases. Over the years, some of them leaked stories that kept the pot of speculation simmering. Tales emerged of UFOs hovering over American nuclear missile silos in the late 1960s, allegedly even disabling the missiles temporarily, events that officers at those bases later claimed had indeed occurred. If true, such incidents were chilling. Unknown craft demonstrating an interest in humanity's most destructive weapons. Was it enemy espionage, or something beyond human? No one could say for sure, because reports of those events were hushed up at the time. By the time the 1970s drew to a close, the public narrative on UFOs was deeply polarized. On one side, the official position held that there was nothing extraordinary to see. UFOs were a mix of mistakes and myths, and the government had no hidden aliens in hangars. On the other side, a growing community of UFO enthusiasts, and even some former officials, believed a grand secret was being covered up. They whispered about government men in black, intimidating witnesses into silence, about retrieval teams scooping up crashed saucers and hidden autopsy labs. The truth, whatever it was, remained elusive. But one thing was certain. From the late 1940s through the height of the Cold War, the skies over Earth were under observation by watchful militaries, by scientists and sky watchers, and perhaps, just perhaps, by unknown eyes as well. Every unusual radar blip or unexplainable light kept alive the possibility that we were not alone in the cold night of the cosmos, and that someone might have been monitoring our fragile blue planet all along. While UFO sightings and secret projects played out in the skies and shadows, another approach to answering the ultimate question, are we alone, was taking shape in the quiet halls of science. Instead of watching for visitors, a few visionaries decided to listen for them. If intelligent beings were out there, perhaps they were sending signals across the cosmos, intentionally or not. In the mid-20th century, as radio astronomy blossomed, humanity began aiming its ear toward the stars in the hope of overhearing an alien hello. The first modern attempt to eavesdrop on extraterrestrial radio chatter came in 1960, under the guidance of a young astronomer named Frank Drake. He dubbed his pioneering experiment Project Ozma, after a princess in an imaginary far-off land from the Oz books, a poetic nod to the distant, magical places he was searching. Drake used an 85-foot radio telescope in Green Bank, West Virginia, tuning it to a frequency near the 21-centimeter wavelength, the natural emission line of hydrogen, a universal frequency one might choose for interstellar communication. He pointed the dish at two nearby sun-like stars, Epsilon Eridani and Tau Ceti, and for weeks he listened intently for any signal that might break the cosmic silence. The equipment of the day could only scan one narrow channel at a time, a far cry from the millions of channels modern SETI can sift simultaneously. So Drake patiently moved through the dial, hoping to catch a whisper from another world. In the end, Project Ozma heard nothing but the steady hum of background noise. Yet it marked the beginning of a new field of exploration. For the first time, humans had attempted to directly find a message from intelligent neighbors in the galaxy. Encouraged by Drake's initiative, other scientists soon joined the hunt. In 1961, Drake organized a small conference at Green Bank, where he introduced an equation, soon famous as the Drake equation, to estimate how many advanced civilizations might be out there in our Milky Way. The number was uncertain, but it was not zero. It suggested that under the right conditions, communicating civilizations could indeed exist. This provided a scientific framework and a dash of optimism for those dedicating their careers to the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, or SETI, as the effort came to be known. It suggested that the question of other civilizations was not fanciful, but one that science could pursue with rational hope. Through the 1960s and 1970s, SETI experiments remained modest, often run on shoestring budgets and borrowed telescope time. Radio telescopes around the world occasionally devoted hours to scanning nearby stars for unexplained signals. NASA became interested as well. In the early 1970s, a detailed plan called Project Cyclops was drawn up, envisioning a giant array of 1,000 dishes to survey the galaxy for signals. The price tag was enormous, and Cyclops never got built, but it signaled that the search for cosmic company was being taken seriously by some within the scientific establishment. Instead, smaller projects carried on quietly, usually piggybacking on other radio astronomy observations. Then, one summer night in 1977, something happened that electrified the SETI community. At Ohio State University's Big Ear radio telescope, a large stationary radio dish scanning the skies, an extremely strong, focused signal abruptly blared through on August 15th. It lasted for 72 seconds, the length of time Big Ear kept that part of the sky in its beam, and then it was gone. When a researcher named Jerry Eman reviewed the computer printout days later, he was astonished to see a signal so powerful and anomalous that it stood out like a beacon. In red pen, he circled the sudden spike of numbers and scribbled one word in the margin. Wow. That single word gave the mysterious signal its enduring name, the WOW signal. The WOW signal had all the hallmarks one might expect from an interstellar transmission. It was narrowband, confined to a very small range of frequencies, unlike natural cosmic sources, which tend to spread across many frequencies. It appeared smack on a frequency astronomers considered promising, near the 1.42 GHz line of neutral hydrogen, and it seemed to emanate from deep space in the direction of the constellation Sagittarius, with no Earth-based origin that could be identified. In short, it was exactly the kind of signal SETI scientists had dreamed of finding. Subsequent checks of that region of sky, however, met with silence. The signal never repeated. Despite many attempts over the years, the WOW signal remains a tantalizing one-time event. Could it have been a transmission from a distant civilization? Maybe a brief beacon or an experiment, a cosmic shout that we happen to overhear? Or was it an odd fluke of radio interference or an undiscovered natural phenomenon? Decades later, the WOW signal is still discussed and debated, and enticing, perhaps, in the annals of the search for alien life. Meanwhile, the broader SETI effort continued to refine its methods. By the 1980s and 1990s, technological advances allowed for receivers that could monitor millions of frequency channels at once, vastly improving the chances of catching a true signal amid the static. Projects multiplied, university groups, international collaborations, even a crowdsourced screensaver program called SETI at Home that let home computers around the world help analyze data. Instead of a lone astronomer at a radio dial, powerful computers now sifted through cosmic static for any hint of an orderly pulse or pattern. NASA briefly operated its own formal SETI program in the early 1990s, scanning nearby sun-like stars, but funding was cut after a year. Some politicians derided it as a search for little green men. SETI work continued under private auspices. The non-profit SETI Institute, founded in California by Drake and colleagues, kept the flame alive with projects like Project Phoenix, which targeted hundreds of nearby stars in the 1990s. There were moments of excitement, a few intriguing signals that raised hearts in the control room, but each turned out to be a false alarm. An Earth satellite, a distant airplane's radar, or the faint buzz of a terrestrial transmitter. Dashed hopes and false alarms became a way of life for SETI scientists. Patience was essential. The sky was very quiet, but they listened on. Despite the cosmic silence, the act of listening has profoundly changed our perspective. Late at night, giant radio dishes stand quietly under the stars, their metal ears turned skyward, symbolizing humanity's hope and curiosity. We even sent out our own calling cards. In 1974, astronomers used the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico to beam a powerful radio message toward a star cluster 25,000 light-years away. A brief pictogram of our place in the universe, dispatched knowing that eons will pass before it ever arrives. We've attached plaques and golden records to spacecraft sailing out of the solar system, carrying greetings and music for any finder. These acts were as much about us, declaring that we are here and what we are like, as about any realistic expectation of being heard. As the decades passed, SETI became more global and more ambitious. In 2015, a privately funded initiative called Breakthrough Listen was announced, infusing $100 million into listening projects over 10 years. Suddenly, new telescopes and massive computing power were enlisted to sweep more of the sky than ever before, scanning millions of star systems across broad swaths of the radio spectrum. In China, the giant Fast Radio Telescope, currently the largest single-dish radio telescope on Earth, began its own scans of the heavens, joining the quest. Each year that goes by without a confirmed signal has only deepened the resolve of these modern sky listeners. After all, as they often remind themselves, we have only sampled a minuscule fraction of the billions of star systems in our galaxy. The search, in many ways, has barely begun. Will the universe answer us one day? That question hangs in the air each time a researcher stares at a screen full of noise from a distant star, hoping for a telltale spike, or when an algorithm flags an unusual pattern and teams rush to investigate. It is the question that keeps them pointing their antennas upward, night after night. To date, the universe has offered only a heavy silence. But the people listening have not given up. They maintain a relaxing, slightly mysterious optimism, a sense that any moment, perhaps when least expected, the headphones might crackle to life with a signal that whispers, "We're here." The quest to find out if someone is watching Earth, or at least communicating across the void, continues with a patience and passion that spans generations. As our story continues beyond these early clues and earnest attempts, we find humanity at a crossroads of wonder and technology. From mysterious lights and hidden files to giant telescopes and faint signals, we have been gathering pieces of a grand puzzle. In the next part of our journey, the focus will shift to the cutting edge of that search and the new mysteries unfolding, keeping alive the age-old question that has driven us from the start. The documentary is still in progress, the night sky still above us, and somewhere out there, perhaps, an answer still waits. As our journey continues, the mysteries surrounding Earth only deepen. We step back in time to eras long before modern sightings, when ancient peoples gazed at the stars and spun legends about visitors from the sky. In hushed tones and a calm cadence, let us explore these mysteries one by one, maintaining an open mind but a gentle skepticism. The pace is unhurried, each word deliberate, as we delve into phenomena that have inspired wonder and debate across centuries. In the quiet of antiquity, before the first rockets pierced the atmosphere, humans already pondered whether beings from beyond had touched our world. Ancient myths and carvings speak of gods descending from the heavens, imparting knowledge or simply observing humankind. Some today interpret these tales as possible memories of ancient astronauts, extraterrestrials who might have visited our ancestors. It's a captivating idea that Earth's earliest civilizations may have been under the watchful eyes of cosmic visitors, their encounters recorded not in science, but in myth and legend. Even renowned astronomer Carl Sagan once mused that if aliens had contacted humanity in the distant past, traces of those encounters might survive in our folklore. He and colleague Iosif Shklovsky speculated that an alien contact, if brief, could be remembered as myth, just as an 18th century First Nations story framed European ships as giant birds. Sagan, ever the skeptic, stressed these musings were unproven possibilities, not established facts. Still, the seed was planted. Could the myths of gods and sky beings be distant echoes of real extraterrestrial visits? By the late 20th century, that seed of speculation blossomed into a full-fledged hypothesis. The ancient astronaut theory captured popular imagination, suggesting that alien intelligences not only visited Earth long ago, but perhaps guided human civilization. Proponents point to the great monuments of antiquity, the pyramids of Egypt, Stonehenge's towering stones, the intricate Nazca lines of Peru, and ask whether these feats might have been achieved with otherworldly aid. The argument goes that some ancient structures required knowledge or technology seemingly too advanced for their time. For example, Erich von Däniken, one of the theory's most famous advocates, claimed that monuments like Giza's pyramids, or the stone city of Pumapunku in the Andes were beyond the capabilities of the ancient builders alone. According to von Däniken, the indigenous peoples of antiquity must have had help, perhaps in the form of advanced visitors from the stars. In his view, extraterrestrials were responsible for some of humanity's greatest early innovations and were later enshrined in human memory as gods or divine messengers. These ideas found a receptive audience far beyond academic circles. Books like Chariots of the Gods, 1968, excited millions with provocative interpretations of ancient art and scripture. Were the strange figurines of ancient Japan, the dogu, with their large eyes and helmet-like heads, meant to resemble space-suited aliens? Did an Egyptian temple's hieroglyphs accidentally depict modern vehicles like helicopters and submarines, hinting at lost knowledge? Von Däniken and others said yes, arguing that disparate cultures sharing similar iconography of sky people or flying chariots was evidence of a common cosmic source. They pointed to Hindu epics describing flying vimanas, chariots of the gods, and biblical stories of fiery chariots, claiming these were poetic accounts of advanced craft visiting ancient humans. According to this theory, extraterrestrials might even have engineered humanity. Some theorists propose that aliens tweaked the DNA of early hominids to create modern Homo sapiens. In this narrative, we might literally be the descendants of aliens, or their experiments, left to build civilizations with a spark of cosmic inheritance. Such claims are thrilling, but they raise eyebrows among scientists and historians. Mainstream experts note that these ideas often rely on gaps in our knowledge or misinterpretations of ancient achievements. For instance, ancient astronaut theorists argue that primitive peoples couldn't have constructed massive pyramids or megaliths without help. Yet archaeologists have demonstrated how those feats were within human capabilities. The Egyptians, for example, left behind evidence of how they quarried, transported, and lifted massive stones using ropes, ramps, and sheer manpower. Far from appearing overnight, monuments like the Great Pyramids evolved over generations of engineering know-how, with clear archaeological records explaining their construction. In Peru, researchers discovered that the builders of Sacsayhuaman Fortress moved huge rocks with rudimentary but effective rope and lever systems. No anti-gravity devices or alien levitation required. Likewise, those sprawling Nazca line drawings in the desert were likely made by people carefully marking lines with wooden stakes and ropes, then scraping away dark gravel to reveal lighter sand. They are stunning, but not impossible without flight. A person on a nearby hilltop could survey and guide the designs. Time and again, archaeologists find that supposed mysteries have down-to-earth explanations. Our ancestors, it turns out, were clever and capable on their own terms. There's also a humbling point to consider. Attributing ancient wonders to aliens can underestimate human ingenuity and carry uncomfortable implications. Many great structures often cited by ancient alien enthusiasts are the creations of non-European cultures: the pyramids in Egypt, Mayan temples, Pacific Island statues. In earlier eras, Western observers refused to believe that indigenous peoples could have built such monuments, instead crediting mythical lost civilizations or Europeans in disguise. Today's alien hypothesis can sound like a new form of that old disbelief, replacing forgotten white builders with extraterrestrials. As one critic noted, the pattern remains. Assume the locals couldn't possibly have done it, so invent outsiders who must have. In truth, evidence shows the opposite. Cultures from Cambodia to Illinois were fully capable of remarkable feats of architecture and engineering when given time, resources, and motivation. By insisting it must have been aliens, we risk dismissing the creativity and skill of our own ancestors. Believing we are not alone in the universe can be uplifting, but not if it blinds us to the accomplishments of humanity itself. And yet, the notion of ancient visitors retains its allure. It taps into a deep sense of wonder, the possibility that Earth has long been observed by wiser, older cosmic civilizations. Perhaps this very hope explains the theory's popularity despite the lack of scientific evidence. In the 1970s, von Däniken's books became bestsellers, even as scholars debunked their claims. Interest waned for a time, but by the late 1990s, a revival was underway. Television played a role. Series like Ancient Aliens dramatized these hypotheses for millions of viewers, blending fact and conjecture in mesmerizing ways. The internet, too, provided fertile ground for sharing unusual interpretations of sacred texts and archaeological anomalies. Today, a passionate community continues to scour history for hints of extraterrestrial influence, from the alignment of pyramids with star constellations to possible airplane shapes in prehistoric art. Mainstream science remains unconvinced, pointing out misquotes, mistranslations, and confirmation bias in these claims. But the debate itself has become part of our cultural landscape. After all, pondering ancient astronauts is not just about aliens. It's about our longing to connect with something greater, to believe our story intertwines with a cosmic one. It is the same wonder that leads us to scan the skies today, hoping for a sign that we are not alone. If ancient aliens visited long ago, have they left any new messages for us? This question lingers as we shift our focus to crop circles, one of the more curious modern mysteries. Imagine a tranquil summer morning in the English countryside, golden fields stretching to the horizon, and there, suddenly, a gigantic geometric pattern pressed into the crops, as if by an unseen hand. No footprints in the soil, no tire tracks, just acres of wheat swirled and flattened into precise circles and angles. Such scenes began to appear in the late 20th century and instantly captured public imagination. Were these elaborate creations the work of pranksters with planks? Or could they be signals from some higher intelligence? Many who stumbled upon these designs felt an eerie thrill, as if they were gazing upon a coded message meant for humanity's eyes, laid gently into the landscape under cover of night. The crop circle phenomenon took root in the late 1970s, primarily in southern England's rural counties. At first, they were simple rings or circles, few feet across, easy to dismiss as odd weather effects or animal activity. But as years passed, the formations grew in size and complexity. By the 1980s and 90s, enormous and intricate patterns, some spanning hundreds of feet, were materializing literally overnight in fields of wheat, barley, and corn. These weren't just circles anymore, but elaborate geometric pictograms, mandalas, spirals, star-like symbols, even shapes resembling insects or astronomical diagrams. Farmers would go to sleep with their crops intact and wake to find living works of art stamped into the terrain. The stalks were often bent, not broken, woven into smooth arcs, as if a burst of energy had pushed them flat without killing them. This detail especially struck observers. How could hoaxers flatten large areas so cleanly and quietly? To some, the delicacy and complexity of the formations seemed to preclude a human creator. The designs appeared intelligently crafted, as if executed by an aerial force that laid down patterns with laser-like precision. Could it be, believers wondered, that extraterrestrials, or some unknown Earth energy were at work, communicating in the universal language of mathematics and form. As the mystery grew, so did the legends. A few scientists floated natural explanations. Perhaps unusual winds or electromagnetic forces were swirling the crops into patterns. One meteorologist hypothesized that a kind of whirlwind or plasma vortex could create circular impressions on the ground. Indeed, a century earlier, in 1880, an English scientist had blamed some crop circles on a freak storm, suggestive of cyclonic wind action. However, as formations became more complex, purely weather-based theories struggled. British researcher Terence Meaden's whirlwind hypothesis had to become increasingly elaborate, at one point invoking an electrified plasma vortex, before even he conceded that the most intricate circles were likely man-made hoaxes. Others speculated about ball lightning or Earth energy lines as culprits, but no evidence ever confirmed such causes. The paranormal camp had its own ideas. Perhaps UFOs were landing and pressing down the crops in the process, or aliens were beaming messages into fields from above. In popular culture, crop circles became entwined with UFO lore, those perfect rings in fields, an iconic calling card of flying saucers in movies and books. For a time, many crop circle researchers truly believed something non-human was at work. They noted how the stalks in some genuine circles appeared to be blown outwards from the center, as if heated rapidly. One fringe theory posited microwave radiation. Some reported finding inexplicable magnetic or radiation readings at the sites, or changes in the soil composition, although such claims were often anecdotal and not reliably replicated. Enthusiasts imagined that perhaps an alien intelligence was trying to communicate in binary code or sacred geometry, choosing the anonymity of empty fields to send messages without causing panic. As designs evolved to include complex fractal patterns and even pictorial elements, each new formation was scrutinized like a text to be decoded. The mystery deepened, and with it, the temptation to invoke otherworldly answers. Then, in 1991, the veil was lifted, at least in part, by two men with wooden boards. Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley, an English duo, came forward to confess that they had personally created many of the most famous crop circles in the UK. With mischievous pride, they demonstrated their technique, using ropes and flatboards to walk down the crops in coordinated patterns. Starting in the late 70s, these two pranksters had spent many a night out in the fields under the moonlight, crafting ever more elaborate formations to confound those who studied the circles. They claimed to have been inspired by a 1966 incident in Tully, Australia, where a farmer reported a flying saucer rising from a swamp and leaving a circular patch of flattened reeds. Intrigued by that story, Bauer and Chorley began making circles in English grain fields as a kind of practical joke. At first, simple rings, and later huge patterns as public interest grew. Over the years, they made over 200 circles, they said, without getting caught, enjoying the speculation their art provoked. To prove their point, they added straight lines and squares into some designs, shapes which natural whirlwinds would have great difficulty producing. Their confession was a bombshell. Suddenly, the most elaborate circles were not so inexplicable after all. They were human creativity and stealth in action, not alien artifacts. The revelation didn't stop the phenomenon, but it did reframe it. Once Bauer and Chorley showed how it could be done, many others took up the challenge. Crop circles became a sort of underground art form, with teams of so-called circle makers around the world, stamping their own imaginative designs into fields, often covertly, and sometimes even commissioned by advertisers or artists. Indeed, a growing underground art movement embraced crop circles, using computers, GPS, and careful planning to execute stunningly intricate patterns, some of which rivaled any alleged genuine circle in complexity. Physicists suggested that with tools like GPS and lasers, the most complex formations could be made by skilled human hands, especially under cover of darkness, when the creators wouldn't be disturbed. Many crop circles turned out to be exactly that. Human designs, sometimes made as pranks, sometimes for publicity, and sometimes simply as art for art's sake. Notably, in the years after the Big Confession, numerous hoaxers were caught in the act of making new circles, reinforcing the point that people, not aliens, were behind this modern myth. Even some formations that enthusiasts declared too perfect to be man-made were later claimed by their very human creators, who enjoyed duping the experts. It's now generally accepted that the vast majority of crop circles are man-made hoaxes or art installations. Even researchers who once championed exotic explanations admit that, at the very least, a significant portion were created by enterprising individuals with time and planks on their hands. Yet, like any good mystery, this one has not died out. It has evolved. To this day, each summer brings new formations, particularly in England, where the phenomenon began, and with them, a fresh wave of curiosity. A small number of crop circle aficionados still maintain that a select few patterns show anomalies, say, inexplicably bent, not crushed, stalks, or anomalous electromagnetic readings, suggesting there might be real circles made by something beyond our current understanding. They argue that hoaxers may copy authentic circles, muddying the waters, and that we shouldn't throw out the cosmic hypothesis entirely. It remains true that while many circles have known authors, a few each year seem to come out of nowhere with origins unknown. Could some be messages or manifestations from an unknown intelligence, using fields as a canvas? It's a fringe view, but it keeps the spark of mystery alive. One famous episode in 2001 briefly reignited speculation. In a field near the Chilbolton Observatory in Hampshire, UK, a peculiar rectangular crop pattern appeared that mimicked the design of a radio message humans had sent into space decades earlier. In 1974, astronomers broadcast the Arecibo message, a binary encoded picture beamed toward a distant star cluster, essentially a digital calling card of Earth's location and life forms. 27 years later, this crop formation seemed to be a response. It reproduced the Arecibo message's grid layout, but with certain details changed, as if an alien civilization had sent back its own information. The formation even included a pictogram of a humanoid head with large eyes, a classic alien grey visage, replacing the human figure in the original message. For those who wanted to believe, it was as if our invitation to the stars had finally been answered in the fields of England. Of course, upon investigation, circle-making experts declared this Arecibo answer a hoax as well, likely crafted by the same skilled team that had made another complex pattern in that area the year before. The SETI Institute publicly stated it was undoubtedly the work of human artists, not extraterrestrials. Still, the story captured imaginations and showed how even in an age of reason, we thrill at the idea of communicating with the unknown. The Chilbolton reply was a playful deception, but for a moment it invited us to dream that someone, somewhere, might be talking back. At the end of the day, crop circles straddle the line between mystery and creativity. The gentle rolling fields and their enigmatic designs provide a canvas for both human mischief and our enduring hopes that we aren't alone. By now, we can smile knowing that many circles are just clever pranks. We picture Doug and Dave chuckling in the night as they stomp out a masterpiece to baffle the world. And yet, as the sun rises and illuminates a newly appeared mandala in the wheat, even a skeptic might feel a tingle of awe. Hoax or not, The pattern is beautiful and unexplained in that instant, a reminder of how easily our sense of wonder can be awakened. In the whisper of wind over the laid-down stalks, one can imagine a voice saying, "We are here," whether that "we" is human artists or something beyond. The crop circle phenomenon, grounded as it is in earthly trickery, still manages to lift our eyes upward and our minds outward, pondering the possibility of messages from the great unknown. As we leave the crop fields behind, our exploration leads us to another arena of enigmatic encounters, this time in the skies, tracked on radar screens and witnessed by those trained to guard our airspace. If someone or something is watching Earth, one might expect them to show up not just in ancient tales or nocturnal artworks, but in the very domains policed by modern technology. Indeed, over the past decades, military sightings of UFOs have provided some of the most compelling and puzzling evidence that there is something out there. When seasoned pilots and radar operators report objects that defy explanation, the mystery steps out of folklore and fringe speculation and onto official record. These cases carry a weight that makes even skeptics pause. Here are credible observers, often with years of experience and nothing to gain, describing aerial phenomena that seemingly outstrip any known aircraft. And all too often, such incidents have been shrouded in secrecy, buried in classified files, or explained away to avoid public alarm. Let us fly into these cloudy skies of uncertainty, guided by a calm voice recounting remarkable events that officials have sometimes struggled to understand or chose not to fully reveal. During the Second World War, amidst the cacophony of human conflict, came reports of something quietly other. Allied and Axis airmen alike described bright, nimble objects pacing their planes during night missions. They called them Foo Fighters, a whimsical name for a disconcerting phenomenon. In late 1944, for instance, a US night fighter crew over Europe encountered a cluster of glowing orange lights that seemed to toy with their aircraft, darting away whenever pursuit was attempted. These fiery orbs would appear singly or in groups, sometimes in formation, matching the plane's maneuvers at speeds around 200 mph or more. Pilots reported that the objects exhibited astonishing agility, circling and outmaneuvering them, yet oddly never engaging or causing harm. Ground radar rarely picked up anything. To the instruments, the skies were clear, even as pilots swore they saw balls of fire zipping alongside. The sightings unnerved crews already tense from combat. Military intelligence investigated, suspecting at first that these might be some new enemy weapon, perhaps advanced German drones or jets, but they found no evidence of craft behind the lights. The Robertson Panel in 1953, a CIA-led committee on UFOs, later reviewed wartime Foo Fighter reports, but could offer no firm conclusion either. Many pilots privately admitted they had no idea what they had seen. The objects behaved like plain light, with no solid form, as one historian put it. Whether atmospheric electrical effects or something more exotic, the Foo Fighters of Wobbe Foot set the stage for the mysteries to follow. Even amid our greatest war, there were hints we might not be alone in the skies. After Wobbe Wutu, the modern era of UFOs, unidentified flying objects, truly took off. The late 1940s and 1950s saw a wave of sightings, some by civilians, many by military personnel. Perhaps the most dramatic cluster of military-related encounters occurred in the summer of 1952 over Washington, D.C. In July of that year, radar operators at National Airport and nearby Air Force facilities picked up multiple unknown objects streaking through the restricted airspace over the US Capitol. Visual sightings corresponded. Airline pilots on approach to DC saw glowing lights zipping by at incredible speeds, and even a Capital Airlines crew reported objects, like falling stars without tails, that weren't meteors or any known aircraft. On several nights, at least a dozen UFOs were tracked, whizzing above the city, sometimes showing up in swarms on radar screens. The Air Force scrambled fighter jets in response. The pilots raced into the muggy night skies, straining to locate the intruders. But the moment they got near a radar contact, the UFOs would accelerate and vanish. Those flying saucers, it was said, simply outran the jets, disappearing with sudden bursts of speed that no human craft could achieve at the time. Public interest turned to near hysteria as newspapers blared headlines about flying saucers invade Capitol. President Truman himself, behind closed doors, demanded explanations from his Air Force chiefs. Under pressure, the Air Force held a large press conference where they rather unconvincingly blamed the sightings on a temperature inversion, a weather condition that can cause radar mirages. They implied that what radar saw might just have been layers of warm air, and what pilots saw were perhaps stars or meteors distorted by the summer heat. Many journalists and citizens were skeptical of this pat answer. How could weather trick veteran radar men and pilots night after night? The incident, known as the Washington merry-go-round, remains one of the landmark cases in UFO lore. It highlighted a pattern that would recur. Unexplained objects appearing above some of the most secure locations on Earth, provoking both alarm and swift efforts by authorities to dismiss or cover up the event, ostensibly to prevent public panic. Throughout the Cold War, both the United States and the Soviet Union encountered puzzling radar contacts and aerial phenomena that raised the question, could these be spying aircraft or something beyond human technology? Often the initial fear was a human adversary, a secret spy plane or missile. But when that was ruled out, the militaries faced a conundrum. Do they admit they have no control over these incursions? Typically, the answer was to downplay or classify such events. In the US, Project Blue Book, the Air Force's official UFO investigation program, catalogued 12,618 reports between 1952 and 1969, the vast majority of which were explained away as stars, clouds, or conventional aircraft. Yet even Blue Book left 701 cases unexplained, including incidents involving military witnesses. One famous unsolved case from 1948 involved an Air National Guard pilot, Captain Thomas Mantell, who died in a crash while chasing a high-altitude UFO over Kentucky, initially rumoured to be a spaceship, though later chalked up to possibly a balloon. Another in 1956 at RAF Bentwaters, also in England, saw radar and pilots track a dazzling white object that zoomed off at unbelievable speed when jets approached. These incidents seldom made front-page news at the time. They were either kept quiet or given mundane explanations. But in declassified files, one can find the astonished memos and reports of officers who witnessed things they could not rationalize. One of the most striking military encounters occurred in 1976 over Tehran, Iran, a case often cited for its high credibility. In the dead of night, calls flooded Iran's Air Force Command about a bright object hovering over the city. They scrambled two F-4 Phantom II jet interceptors to investigate. The jet pilots indeed saw a luminous object in the sky, a brilliant craft that outpaced and outmaneuvered them. When the first F-4 drew close, its instruments suddenly went dead, communications and navigation equipment failing mysteriously, only to return to normal when the pilot broke off the pursuit. A second jet experienced something even more jarring. As the pilot tried to lock on the UFO, the object seemingly retaliated by launching a bright, smaller orb towards him. In a panic, he attempted to fire a missile, but at that instant, his weapons control panel went offline. He couldn't shoot. The glowing orb zipped by, then returned to the main object, which then sped off at incredible speed. Both jets reported these failures. Back on the ground, radar operators had been tracking the UFO too. After the encounter, the Iranian authorities, startled, reached out to US intelligence. The US Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, later documented the incident in a detailed report distributed to the White House and Pentagon, noting it as a highly significant event with multiple reliable witnesses and electronic data. The DIA report highlighted the case's strong points. The UFO displayed technical capabilities beyond anything known, disabling advanced fighter systems at will, and the crew's descriptions were consistent with no sign of a hoax. No definitive explanation ever emerged. Decades later, some analysts suggested the pilots might have encountered the fiery re-entry of a Soviet rocket. Indeed, a space debris re-entry occurred that night, which could account for a bright light moving across the sky. However, that doesn't easily explain the onboard failures or the radar visual chase elements. The Tehran incident remains one of the most compelling dogfights with an unknown craft on record, demonstrating how real the phenomenon could appear to military personnel, and how even geopolitical rivals, Iran and the US in this case, were equally baffled by what might have been someone else's technology intruding in our skies. Another well-known encounter took place in 1980 in England, in the cold dark of Rendlesham Forest near twin NATO air bases. In late December, US Air Force personnel stationed at RAF Bentwaters, Woodbridge, among them a deputy base commander, saw strange lights descend into the forest outside the base perimeter. A small team went into the woods, thinking perhaps an aircraft had crashed. What they found defied that expectation. According to their accounts, there was a glowing metallic object moving through the trees, emitting bright lights. Sergeant witnesses described it as a sort of triangular craft, about the size of a car, with a pulsing red light on top and a bank of blue lights underneath, unlike any airplane or helicopter. As they approached, the object darted away through the forest, maneuvering around trees with uncanny agility and silently ascending into the night sky at phenomenal speed. The next day, investigators found physical evidence in the clearing. Impressions in the soil where tripod-like landing gear might have rested, scorch marks on nearby trees, and notably, radiation readings that were significantly above the normal background level in that area. Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt, the deputy base commander, later wrote an official memo to the UK Ministry of Defence detailing the incident, including the unexplained radiation spikes and that multiple personnel witnessed the departing lights. Holt even recorded audio during the second night of sightings, capturing the tense moment of chasing the lights through the woods. For years, both the US and UK military downplayed the event. The British MOD said it posed no defence significance. But Holt never recanted. In fact, in 2010, he signed a sworn affidavit stating he believed the craft was extraterrestrial in origin, and that senior officials had covered up the true nature of the incident. Other airmen present have given similar testimonies, though skeptics suggest they might have been fooled by a combination of a nearby lighthouse beam, bright stars, and adrenaline. Still, Rendlesham is sometimes called Britain's Roswell, and it remains a tantalizing case where trained military observers had a close encounter, backed by physical traces. Moving across the Atlantic, one of the largest mass sightings involving military confirmation happened over Phoenix, Arizona in 1997. On March 13th of that year, during the peaceful hours of evening, thousands of Arizonans witnessed something astonishing. A huge, V-shaped formation of lights passing silently overhead. Many saw a solid triangular or boomerang-shaped craft outlined by 5 or 6 lights, so large it blotted out stars as it moved. It glided slowly and without sound. Among the witnesses was the state's governor at the time, Fife Symington, a former Air Force pilot himself. The governor initially played along with the public fervor by jokingly dressing down an aide in an alien costume at a press conference, subtly ridiculing the sighting to calm things down. But a decade later, he admitted, he too had seen the massive object and found it unlike any human-made machine. It was enormous and inexplicable, Symington said, acknowledging it definitely wasn't a conventional aircraft or flares in the sky. The US Air Force, however, did have an official explanation. They claimed that later that night, around 10 p.m., they had dropped military flares over a training range southwest of Phoenix, and that those flares were what people saw in the sky. Indeed, video footage taken in Phoenix shows a row of bright lights that do resemble flares floating down, the second event of the night. But witnesses of the earlier V-shaped craft vehemently reject this explanation, noting that flares don't fly in formation or traverse the entire state. Some suspect the flare drop was a deliberate diversion, an attempt to create a prosaic story to muddy the waters of the extraordinary sighting earlier in the evening. To this day, the Phoenix lights are unexplained. The case is remarkable not only for the sheer number of witnesses, but also for the apparent size of the craft and the involvement of high-profile officials as eyewitnesses. It underscores how even in an age of ubiquitous cameras and aircraft, there are still sightings that astonish and defy easy answers, leaving a whole city wondering what just flew over their rooftops. While dramatic incidents like Washington 52, Tehran 76, Rendlesham 80, and Phoenix 97 have become UFO legends, a quieter but significant shift has happened in recent years. Military and government institutions have begun to acknowledge that unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP, are real and worthy of investigation. The term UAP is now favored over UFO, to emphasize the unknown nature of these events without the cultural baggage of flying saucer imagery. After decades of denial and ridicule, officials are admitting that pilots do see things in the sky that can't be identified, and that some of these things display flight characteristics beyond our cutting-edge technology. A turning point came in the 2000s and 2010s, with the release of US Navy jet camera footage capturing baffling encounters. In 2004, for example, off the coast of California, the USS Nimitz carrier group's fighter pilots engaged with a whitish, tic-tac-shaped object that performed aerodynamics feats that left seasoned commanders stunned. The pilots, including Commander David Fravor, reported the object dropped from 60,000 feet to sea level in seconds, then zipped away so fast it seemed to disappear. Another pilot managed to record an infrared video, later nicknamed the FLAR-1 Tic-Tac video, showing a featureless oval object and their incredulous voices as it darted off. In 2014 to 2015, pilots from the USS Theodore Roosevelt carrier group training off the Atlantic coast also encountered multiple UAP, including one dubbed Gimbal, captured on an infrared video showing a disc-like craft rotating in mid-air against the wind. Navy aviators reported that these unknown objects could accelerate, turn, and climb in ways that no fighter jet or drone they knew of could match. They had no visible engines or exhaust plumes, and they far exceeded the speeds and G-forces any human pilot could withstand. The fact that these incidents were caught on advanced sensors, radar, infrared cameras, in addition to eyewitness accounts, gave them a legitimacy that past anecdotes lacked. The Navy initially kept these encounters quiet, but things changed in December 2017 when several videos leaked and were published by major newspapers showing the Navy UAP footage. This revelation prompted the Pentagon to confirm that the videos were authentic Navy recordings and that the objects were officially classified as unidentified. In April 2020, in a striking move towards transparency, the US Department of Defense publicly released 3 UAP videos, the ones known as FLAR-1, Gimbal, and Go Fast, acknowledging that they depict unidentified aerial phenomena encountered by Navy pilots. For the first time, the Pentagon openly admitted that there are aerial objects detected on military sensors that they cannot explain and that are not secret US technology. This step was significant. It effectively told the world, something's up there, we don't know what, but our pilots are seeing it. The stigma that once surrounded reporting these incidents began to fade. Where a pilot might once fear career repercussions for mentioning a UFO, now the Navy actually updated its protocols to encourage pilots to report UAP encounters so that they could be studied and not dismissed. Over just the last few years, what was once whispered about in back channels became a topic of open congressional hearings. Indeed, by 2021, the US Congress and intelligence community took a deep interest in these military sightings. Lawmakers, spurred by the credible Navy reports, demanded a formal accounting. In June 2021, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, ODNI, released an unclassified UAP report summarizing what was known. It examined 144 UAP incidents reported by US military personnel since 2004 and found that 143 of them remained unexplained after analysis. The report made headlines around the world. While it did not confirm any alien origin, it stated plainly that many UAP appeared to be real physical objects. They were detected by multiple sensors, and some left footprints like radar trackings or was observed by pilots in the cockpit, and that they demonstrated flight capabilities that current technology cannot account for. In other words, they weren't hallucinations, but neither were they secret US aircraft, and they didn't seem to belong to adversary nations. At least, no evidence of that. The report's authors expressed concern that whatever these UAP were, they posed a flight safety and potential national security risk. Collisions or misidentifications could have serious consequences. For the Pentagon and intelligence agencies, the hardest part was admitting we don't know. There was no definitive conclusion if these mysterious contacts were advanced drones, natural phenomena, or indeed something genuinely alien. They simply lacked sufficient data to explain them. But that admission itself was extraordinary. It was a kind of turning point where the narrative shifted from UFOs, nonsense, to UAPs are real, and we have no answers yet. High-ranking officials, including former presidents and CIA directors, began to openly acknowledge the issue. As one security expert noted, the fact that flying objects can routinely enter military airspace and outmaneuver jets without us knowing what they are is deeply troubling for national security. This isn't fringe talk. It's coming from sober analysts worried about potential threats, whether terrestrial or otherwise. And for the scientific community, the takeaway was, as one astrophysicist commented, UFOs are real. The easy part is admitting that. The hard part is figuring out what they actually are. Since that 2021 report, efforts to understand UAP have accelerated. The US Department of Defense established a new dedicated office, successively named the UAP Task Force, then the Airborne Object Identification and Management Group, and now the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO, to collect and analyze UAP reports across the military. By 2023, officials indicated they were tracking over 650 UAP cases under examination. Many of these cases are likely mundane or pending closure, but some percentage continues to defy conventional analysis. Across the Atlantic, other nations quietly admit to similar mysteries. Pilots from Canada, Europe, and Asia have spoken about encountering unusual aerial objects during their service. Typically, these accounts were kept internal, for fear of ridicule or misinterpretation, but that culture is slowly changing. Even NASA has taken note and entered the conversation. In 2022, NASA commissioned an independent study team of scientists and experts to examine UAP from a purely scientific perspective, to suggest how to better collect data and demystify the sightings. When NASA's UAP study report was released in September 2023, the space agency's chief, former astronaut, Administrator Bill Nelson, was candid. The NASA independent study team did not find any evidence that UAP have an extraterrestrial origin. A pause, and then he added, "But we don't know what these UAP are." That frank admission from NASA's top official was striking. NASA's report echoed what many have said, that current data is sparse and poorly standardized, making it hard to draw firm conclusions. However, the report recommended that NASA use its technological prowess, satellites, sensors, analytical talent, to help get better evidence on UAP events. In fact, NASA proceeded to appoint a new director of UAP research to coordinate with other agencies in investigating these phenomena. The scientific community, once largely dismissive, is now at least interested in establishing what's really going on. They stress that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So far, we have intriguing videos and credible witnesses, but not the kind of hard proof that would scream aliens to a skeptical scientist. Still, the mere fact that NASA is involved signals that UAP have graduated from tabloid curiosity to a legitimate subject of scientific inquiry. As we wind through these accounts, from ancient conjectures to crop circle capers, from wartime enigmas to modern military encounters, a pattern emerges. Humanity finds itself under observation by mysteries. Sometimes we are watching the skies, and sometimes it feels like something in the skies is watching us. The truth of these phenomena remains just out of reach, tantalizing and unresolved. Each chapter of the story, whether it's an ancient myth or a fighter pilot's video, leaves us with as many questions as answers. And yet, the pursuit of those answers continues, steady and unhurried, much like our narration. With each revelation, a confession of a hoax, a declassified report, a new scientific study, the curtain is drawn back a little further on the unknown. But we have not reached the end of this quest. Our exploration remains under observation itself, evolving with every new discovery and disclosure. There are still deeper questions to ponder. If something, or someone, is indeed watching Earth, what might be their intent? Have there been attempts at direct contact? How has the idea of extraterrestrial watchers influenced our society and science? In the gentle fade-out of our second chapter, we simply acknowledge that the mystery endures. We will carry forward the calm curiosity and open-minded inquiry as we step into the next part of our journey. The night sky still holds its secrets, and Earth's story with the unknown is still being written. With a thoughtful gaze upward, we continue onward, under observation and seeking understanding, as our voyage into the unexplained goes on. The universe is vast, ancient, and filled with countless stars. By all odds, it should also be filled with life and even other civilizations. Yet, when we gaze at the stars and listen for voices, we are met with an unsettling silence. This stark contradiction between our expectation of a lively cosmos and the reality of a quiet sky is known as the Fermi paradox. It was famously summarized in 1950 by physicist Enrico Fermi's simple question: where is everybody? Decades later, as we have learned more about the galaxy's potential to harbor life, Fermi's question has only grown more poignant. We point our radio telescopes to the sky, straining to hear even a whisper from the stars. But so far, we've heard nothing. Under the cascade of starlight above, we can't help but wonder, Are we truly alone? In the quiet of a late autumn evening in 1961, an American astronomer named Frank Drake sat at his desk and contemplated the stars. He was preparing for a meeting of scientists about the possibility of life beyond Earth. To guide their discussion, Drake scribbled a series of factors on a chalkboard, an equation, but not an ordinary one. This was a cosmic equation meant to estimate how many intelligent civilizations might be out there among the Milky Way's billions of stars. Drake's equation was simple in form, yet profound in implication. It stringed together 7 terms, each a piece of the puzzle of life in the cosmos. The first term asked, how fast do stars form in our galaxy? At the time, Drake assumed about 1 new star per year on average, a modest pace in a galaxy of hundreds of billions of stars. Next came the fraction of those stars that host planets. In the early 1960s, nobody knew if planets were common or rare. We had never seen a single planet outside our solar system. Drake optimistically guessed perhaps half of all stars have planets. After that came the number of those planets, per star, that could support life. Perhaps 1 or a few orbit at just the right distance from their sun, not too hot, not too cold, for liquid water to exist. Drake and his colleagues thought a handful of planets per star might fit this just right criteria. The following factor was the fraction of those welcoming worlds where life actually begins. Since Earth was the only example, and life here seemed to blossom as soon as conditions allowed, Drake's team dared to suppose this fraction might be high, maybe even 100%. In other words, they imagined that if a planet is habitable, life will somehow spark there. The equation continued to the next, more speculative steps. Of those living worlds, how many evolve intelligent life, creatures with thoughts and technology? Drake's group, full of scientists brimming with optimism, considered that perhaps on every world where life arises, intelligence eventually follows. So they tentatively put this fraction also at 100%, a bold assumption born of hope rather than evidence. Then, of the worlds with intelligent beings, what fraction developed the ability and desire to communicate across space? Perhaps they discover radio waves or lasers and decide to send messages into the dark. Drake guessed maybe 1 in 10 or 1 in 5 of the intelligent species would try reaching out beyond their planet. Finally came a crucial term: the average lifetime of a communicating civilization. How long can a society of intelligent beings broadcast signals before falling silent? This number could be small, if civilizations quickly self-destruct or lose interest, or it could be enormous, if they endure for millennia. Drake and his colleagues did not settle on a single value. They imagined it could be as short as 1,000 years, or as long as 100 million years, a span almost incomprehensible to us. This last factor, L, was by far the most uncertain. It holds the power to swing the final answer dramatically, from a galaxy teeming with voices to one where perhaps only a lonely echo remains. When all these factors are multiplied together, they produce N, the number of detectable civilizations sharing the galaxy with us. Drake's own rough guesses suggested N might be at least a handful, and possibly millions. The range was huge, reflecting how little we truly knew. In fact, Drake and his colleagues at the 1961 meeting concluded that the number of civilizations could be anywhere from about 1,000 to 100 million, an enormous uncertainty. In the decades since, scientists have attempted to refine the Drake equation's factors. Some are very pessimistic, suggesting that intelligent life might be so rare that we are effectively alone. Others are more optimistic, arguing that the odds could allow for many civilizations. The truth likely lies somewhere in between, but it remains highly uncertain. One recent study in 2020, for example, estimated there might be around 30 active civilizations in our galaxy under certain assumptions. If that is true, they would likely be extremely far apart, on the order of thousands of light years from one another, making detection and communication very challenging with our current technology. The Drake equation, as it came to be called, was never meant to give a precise answer. Instead, it serves as a framework, a way to break down the grand question, "Are we alone?" into smaller, approachable questions. In a calm, thoughtful way, it forces us to consider each ingredient needed for cosmic company. Over the decades, scientists have revisited these ingredients with new data, and the cosmic outlook has changed in surprising ways, especially concerning those first few terms about stars and planets. In 1961, the existence of planets around other stars was still speculative. But today, we know planets are abundant. Our telescopes and satellites have confirmed nearly 6,000 exoplanets, worlds orbiting other suns, and we suspect there are billions more waiting to be discovered. It turns out that planets are the rule, not the exception. Most stars likely have at least one planet, and many have entire families of worlds. This revelation boosts our hopes for finding life's havens out there. Where Drake once guessed perhaps half of stars host planets, we now think almost all stars do. Not only are planets common, but many of them could be habitable. Astronomers have identified a multitude of planets that lie in the Goldilocks zone around their stars, the region where temperatures might allow liquid water to pool on a surface. Some estimates, using data from planet hunting missions, suggest there could be tens of billions of Earth-sized, potentially habitable planets in our Milky Way galaxy alone. It's a breathtaking number. Tens of billions of possible Earths, each a stage where life's drama could unfold. Of course, not all those worlds truly resemble our Earth. Some orbit dim red dwarf stars and might be locked in eternal day or night. Others are a bit larger or smaller, but they offer the right conditions for life as we know it to take root. The Drake equation's early terms have turned out more favourable than Drake could confirm in his day. Star formation in our galaxy ticks along at a few stars per year. Planets appear to be nearly ubiquitous. There is at least one planet, on average, for every star. And plenty of those planets could be gentle Earth-like spheres, with lakes, clouds, and maybe life. This realization adds a hopeful weight to Drake's equation. The first three factors, stars, planets, habitable worlds, suggest ample real estate for life. The later terms of the equation, those dealing with life's emergence, the rise of intelligence, and the lifespan of civilizations, remain far more mysterious. We have only our single example, Earth, to guide our intuition. On Earth, life began quickly, almost as soon as the young planet cooled enough for oceans to form. This hints that under the right conditions, life might spark relatively easily elsewhere too. Yet, for billions of years, Earth's life remained simple, just microorganisms invisible to the naked eye. Complex life, the kind that builds multicellular creatures, took much longer. And intelligent life, capable of inventing radios or telescopes, appeared only in the last sliver of Earth's history. These facts remind us that even if simple life is common, intelligent life might be exceedingly rare. Or perhaps on other worlds, evolution follows a different path, and intelligence could arise more often or more quickly. We simply do not know. Nature guards these secrets on distant shores we have yet to visit. Then we face the question of civilization's lifetimes. Humanity has been using radio for barely a century, a blink in cosmic time. Our technological civilization, for all its achievements, is very young and its future is uncertain. Will we survive and keep broadcasting for thousands of years more, or will our lights dim sooner? The answer to that question for ourselves might also apply to others out there. It is possible that many civilizations flare up like sparks. They light up their planet with technology, send signals or explore space, but then exhaust their resources or succumb to conflicts and fade away. If that tends to happen often, the cosmic night could remain mostly quiet, with only brief overlapping moments when two civilizations exist at the same time and manage to detect one another. On the other hand, perhaps some civilizations learn to avoid self-destruction and persist for eons, spreading through their star systems and beyond. If even a few achieve such longevity, the galaxy could eventually become alive with their whispers and travels. The Drake equation does not give us one answer, but rather a range of possibilities shaped by our assumptions. With optimistic guesses, it reassures us that we probably have cosmic neighbors, maybe many. With pessimistic guesses, it suggests we could be rare, even unique for now. Importantly, it transforms the question of extraterrestrial life from pure speculation into something we can discuss scientifically. By laying out those 7 factors, Frank Drake invited generations of scientists to gather evidence for each one. And they have. Today, more than 60 years later, every term in Drake's equation is an active field of research. Astrophysicists measure the star formation rate in galaxies. Planetary scientists and astronomers scour the skies for exoplanets and try to determine how many might be habitable. Biologists and chemists study how life might originate on different worlds, attempting to learn if life's spark is truly common or a rarity. Evolutionary scientists consider what paths intelligence might take and what conditions favor it. Futurists and social scientists ponder the trajectories of civilizations, what might enable a society to survive for millennia, or conversely, what pitfalls could cut one short. One recent line of research has even reframed the Drake equation in terms of probability. Rather than asking how many civilizations may exist now, some scientists pose a slightly different query. What are the odds that humanity is the only technological civilization that has ever arisen? Studies using our new knowledge of exoplanets suggest that unless the chances of life developing intelligence are astronomically low, it is very likely that we are not the first nor the only advanced civilization the universe has produced. In other words, given the sheer number of worlds out there, the odds favor that life, and even intelligent life, has happened elsewhere at some point in cosmic history. That doesn't guarantee any two civilizations coexist at the same moment or find each other. They could be separated by thousands of light years or even millions of years in time. Still, this perspective adds a gentle optimism. It suggests that somewhere in the galaxy, other minds have likely wondered about the stars as we do. This thought is both humbling and exhilarating. Under the faint glow of the Milky Way stretching overhead, we can imagine that on some distant planet, perhaps a pale blue dot orbiting a faraway sun, intelligent creatures might be gazing at the sky too. They may have their own version of a Drake equation, pondering if anyone else is out here. They might be asking if someone, perhaps even we on Earth, is sharing the galaxy with them. The Drake equation does not tell us who or where these neighbors are, but it assures us that the question is worth asking. It reminds us that the ingredients for life and intelligence might not be confined to Earth alone. As we improve our cosmic measurements, each new discovery, each exoplanet in a hospitable orbit, each hint that life's chemistry could spark beyond Earth, adjusts those variables and brings us closer to understanding our cosmic neighborhood. Every exoplanet found in a hospitable zone, every hint of life's chemistry beyond Earth, fine-tunes our expectations for finding company. With this framework in mind, the next step is clear: to search. If the early terms of the Drake equation show that potential homes for life abound, then we must look to those homes for signs of life itself. Our journey carries us from an abstract formula on a chalkboard to real, distant planets in the night sky. The question, "Are we alone?" becomes not just a philosophical musing, but a research program. We have the map of possibilities. Now we begin the exploration of actual worlds, seeking Earth's twins and the life they might harbour. The quest for Earth's twins began as soon as technology allowed us to peer beyond our solar system. For most of human history, the stars were merely distant points of light, their planets, if any, hidden from view. But in the late 20th century, that veil began to lift. In 1992, astronomers were astonished to discover the first ever exoplanets orbiting an unlikely star, a rapidly spinning stellar corpse known as a pulsar. Then in 1995, astronomers spotted a giant planet circling a sun-like star, proving that other solar systems do exist. It was not an Earth-like world. In fact, it was a hot, oversized gas giant hugging very close to its star. But it opened the floodgates of discovery. If a massive planet could be found so soon, smaller, more Earth-like ones might be next. Early exoplanet discoveries were often strange and unexpected. Telescopes found hot Jupiters, large gas planets orbiting scorchingly close to their stars, something our own solar system lacks. These oddballs taught us that planetary systems can be more diverse than we imagined. As methods improved, astronomers detected smaller and cooler planets as well. They did this by watching stars wobble under the gravitational tug of unseen planets, or by measuring the faint dimming of starlight as a planet passed in front of its star. Each tiny dip in light was like the heartbeat of a distant world, signaling its presence across the void. Over time, those little dips of starlight revealed thousands of planets. As of now, nearly 6,000 exoplanets have been confirmed, with new ones added regularly. They range from gas giants larger than Jupiter to small rocky spheres, not much bigger than Earth's moon. Every discovery enriches our understanding of the cosmos. Yet amid this menagerie of alien worlds, the most tantalizing targets remain the ones that remind us of home. Planets that could have temperate climates, liquid water, and perhaps life. Astronomers focus their search on the habitable zone around each star, the Goldilocks region, where a planet is not too hot and not too cold, so liquid water could exist on its surface. Water is crucial because on Earth it is the solvent of life, flowing in our cells, oceans, and clouds. If an exoplanet sits in this comfortable belt around its sun, it gets roughly the right amount of warmth to keep water from freezing solid or boiling away, at least in theory. Of course, being in the habitable zone doesn't guarantee a planet is truly habitable. Its atmosphere, chemistry, and many other factors come into play. But it is a promising first filter to find worlds that could be like Earth. The Kepler Space Telescope, launched in 2009, transformed the search for these habitable worlds. For nearly a decade, Kepler stared unblinkingly at a patch of sky, monitoring the brightness of over 150,000 stars. It detected thousands of exoplanets, including dozens that are at least roughly Earth-sized and orbiting in their stars' habitable zones. One of Kepler's famous finds was a planet designated Kepler, a world only a bit larger than Earth that orbits a dim red dwarf star. Kepler 186f is far from us, around 500 light-years away, but it made headlines as the first known Earth-sized planet in a star's habitable zone. Its discovery suggested that planets with the potential for Earth-like conditions might not be exceedingly rare after all. Since then, more intriguing candidates have emerged. Kepler 452b, sometimes nicknamed Earth's cousin, orbits in the habitable zone of a star, very much like our Sun. This planet is larger than Earth, a super-Earth, and the star it circles is older, giving a glimpse into a possible future Earth scenario. While Kepler 452b is likely too big to be a true twin of our planet, its presence shows that even Sun-like stars can host worlds in the comfortable embrace of the habitable zone. Then there is TRAPPIST-1, a faint ultra-cool star 40 light-years away that boasts an entourage of 7 Earth-sized planets. 3 of those planets lie in or near the star's habitable zone. Imagine standing on one of these TRAPPIST-1 worlds. The star is a ruddy ember in a dim sky, and you might see the silhouettes of sister planets hanging larger than our moon does in Earth's sky. It's a scene straight out of a science fiction dream, yet based on real discoveries. Closer to home, our nearest neighbouring star system has also offered excitement. In 2016, scientists discovered Proxima Centauri b, an Earth-mass planet orbiting within the habitable zone of Proxima Centauri, the closest star to our Sun, at just over 4 light-years away. 4 light-years is about 25 trillion miles, a distance our current spacecraft would take tens of thousands of years to travel. Yet in cosmic terms, Proxima b is on our doorstep. It orbits a red dwarf star, much smaller and cooler than the Sun. The planet receives enough starlight to potentially have liquid water, but because it hugs its faint star so closely, a year there lasts only about 11 days. Red dwarf stars like Proxima can be tempestuous, emitting powerful flares that might strip atmospheres or bathe planets in radiation. Whether Proxima b is truly habitable remains unknown. It could be an irradiated, barren rock. But the mere possibility of an Earthish world so nearby thrills scientists and dreamers alike. It raises the prospect that if life exists on that little planet, perhaps a future generation might actually reach it or send probes to explore it. With each new Earth-like planet found, we learn that the concept of an Earth twin is nuanced. Some of these cousins might have thick, crushing atmospheres, or be locked with one face eternally to their star, scorching on one side and freezing on the other. Others might be bone dry or, conversely, water worlds entirely covered in global oceans. The term habitable only means the potential for habitability, a planet at the right temperature. We have yet to determine if any of these worlds truly have air we could breathe or water we could sip. Still, the diversity is dazzling. There are planets with 2 suns in the sky, evoking the iconic double sunset of science fiction. Some planets are hotter than Mercury, where it literally rains molten iron. Others are colder than Pluto, cloaked in eternal frost. Amid this cosmic zoo, the Earth-like ones are a special handful we scrutinize most closely. The search for life beyond Earth often focuses on finding telltale signs in exoplanet atmospheres. When an exoplanet transits, that is, passes in front of its star from our viewpoint, a tiny fraction of the star's light filters through the planet's atmosphere, if it has one, on its way to us. By analyzing this filtered starlight with sensitive instruments, scientists can infer what gases are present around the planet. The James Webb Space Telescope, launched in 2021, has the capability to perform this trick for some nearby exoplanets. Astronomers hope to detect gases like oxygen, ozone, methane, or carbon dioxide in combinations that might suggest biological activity. For example, on Earth, oxygen in the air comes largely from life, from plants and photosynthetic microbes, and without life, it would eventually disappear by reacting with rocks and surface materials. Finding oxygen alongside methane, another gas that on Earth often comes from living things, in an exoplanet's atmosphere would be an intriguing hint that something is alive there. So far, we haven't seen a definitive biosignature on any distant world. That's not surprising, given how challenging these observations are. Exoplanets are tiny specks of darkness next to blinding stars, and teasing out the faint fingerprint of an atmosphere is at the cutting edge of our abilities. Yet progress is steady. We have identified water vapor in the atmospheres of some giant exoplanets, and even a few smaller ones, suggesting clouds and maybe rain could be common on temperate worlds. In one case, an exoplanet about 110 light-years away, called K2-18b, showed hints of water vapor in its skies. However, K2-18b is a super-Earth that might have a thick, Neptune-like gas envelope, possibly more like a mini-Neptune than a true Earth analogue. Still, such findings are steps toward the ultimate goal, detecting a true Earth twin and perhaps finding evidence that it is not sterile. As we scan the skies for these familiar worlds, we are essentially searching for cosmic mirrors, places that might reflect what Earth was like eons ago, or could be in the future. Each potentially habitable exoplanet stirs us to wonder. If it has oceans, do waves lap on alien shores under an alien sky? If it has an atmosphere, does its wind carry the scents of alien forests or the songs of alien creatures? The distance is immense, but the human mind travels there effortlessly, painting pictures of what life might be like on a second Earth. One of the most profound aspects of finding Earth's twins is the perspective it gives us on our own world. We realize that Earth's conditions, once thought unique, may not be so special after all. A rocky planet with water and warmth might be a cosmic commonplace. There could be dozens of such worlds, within a few dozen light-years of us, waiting to be discovered. In fact, statistical analyses based on Kepler data estimate that hundreds of millions of habitable zone planets may exist in our galaxy. Some could even be relatively nearby in the vast scheme of the Milky Way. Whether any of them truly host life is the burning question that drives astronomers to keep looking. The search is far from over. New missions and telescopes are on the horizon, dedicated to hunting exoplanets and characterizing their atmospheres. Projects like TESS, the Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, have already found thousands of planet candidates around bright, closer stars. Future observatories might directly image Earth-like planets around the nearest Sun-like stars, using special techniques to block a star's glare and reveal the faint glow of a planet. Such an image would be transformative, a pale dot that could be a new Earth, where continents and oceans might eventually be discerned, where seasons change and clouds gather. It would be a snapshot of another Earth in the sky. As we discover more about these distant worlds, we also prepare ourselves for what might be the most significant finding in human history: evidence of life beyond Earth. It could start subtly, a strange pattern in atmospheric gases that strongly hints at biology. Or perhaps one day, a radio signal or a laser beacon from one of these Earth-like planets will reach us, unmistakably artificial and intentional. That possibility ties the search for habitable worlds to the search for intelligent life. So far, in our listening to the cosmos, We have heard only the natural static of stars and galaxies. But knowing that there are many promising abodes out there gives us specific places to point our antennas and our hopes. Each Earth's twin we find is a reminder that our story might not be unique. Somewhere on a planet circling a distant star, there may be lakes, forests, and living creatures under a warm sun, not so different from those on our own planet long ago. Or there may be intelligences gazing back across the light years, wondering if someone else is out there. The cosmic ocean has countless islands, and we have started to chart them. We have yet to reach those shores or hear their voices, but simply knowing they exist expands our horizons in every sense. With our catalogue of exoplanets growing and more Earth-like candidates emerging, the notion that life might have taken hold elsewhere becomes ever more plausible. We inch closer to answering that age-old question: are we alone? The discovery of even simple life on an exoplanet would profoundly change our understanding of the universe and our place in it. And if we were to find a world not only teeming with life, but graced with intelligence and civilization, it would raise new wonders and questions. What would those beings look like? How would they think? Could we ever meet or communicate across the light years that separate us? As we contemplate these Earth-like worlds and their possibilities, our curiosity naturally extends to imagining the inhabitants that might dwell there. From bacteria to beings building cities, life on an alien Earth could have followed paths we can scarcely guess. Yet, in our minds, we try to picture them. In the next part of our journey, we leave the realm of planets and venture into speculation about the civilizations that might rise on some of those distant shores. If intelligent life is out there on those pale blue dots, what might it be like? When we consider the prospect of advanced alien civilizations, our minds soar into realms of wonder and conjecture. It is one thing to find a planet that could support life. It is quite another to imagine the beings who might call that world home, especially if they are far ahead of us in technology and knowledge. What would they look like? How might they behave or communicate? Would their values and emotions resemble ours? Or would they be beyond our comprehension? Human imagination has painted many pictures of aliens over the years, from benevolent teachers to fearsome invaders. But setting aside fiction, we can try to reason, however imperfectly, about what truly advanced life in the universe might be like. One way scientists have tried to conceptualize advanced civilizations is by looking at energy. An advanced society, by definition, has high demands and capabilities, and energy is a fundamental currency of technology. In the 1960s, Soviet astronomer Nikolai Kardashev proposed a scale for this purpose. A Type 1 civilization on this scale would utilize roughly all the energy available on its home planet. By that measure, humanity is not yet Type 1. We still tap only a fraction of Earth's resources. A Type 2 civilization would be far more formidable, capable of capturing the energy output of its entire star. To do that, such a society might build structures so immense that they surround their sun like a shell of solar panels, a hypothetical megastructure known as a Dyson sphere. With nearly all of a star's power at their disposal, their technological possibilities would be staggering. This concept was famously popularized by physicist Freeman Dyson. Finally, a Type 3 civilization in Kardashev's scheme would utilize energy on the scale of an entire galaxy, tapping the power of billions of stars. Contemplating these categories stretches our imagination to its limits. A Dyson sphere, for instance, sounds almost mystical. A hollow shell encasing a star, perhaps inhabited on its inner surface, or simply acting as a colossal machine absorbing starlight. Were such a thing ever built in our galaxy, its presence might be detectable from Earth by the subtle dimming of its star, or an unusual infrared glow from the waste heat it would emit. Astronomers have even searched for indirect signs of star-spanning engineering. For example, a fully built Dyson sphere around a star might re-radiate much of its energy as infrared heat. Scientists have scanned the sky for stars with unusually large infrared emissions that could hint at such megastructures, but so far, none have been confirmed. One star observed in recent years, officially designated KIC 8462852, but nicknamed Tabby's star, showed bizarre patterns of dimming that led some to wonder if an alien megastructure was blocking its light. For a while, this cosmic mystery captured the public's imagination, but further observations suggested a natural explanation: clouds of dust orbiting the star, not an extraterrestrial construction. Ultimately, this episode reminded us that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Nature can produce strange phenomena without any intelligent intervention. Energy is only one lens through which to view advanced life. Equally intriguing is the question of form and mind. Life on Earth shows how diverse biology can be, and intelligence might come in forms we've never envisioned. Alien beings could be reptilian or insect-like, aquatic or airborne, or forms stranger still. Perhaps creatures of gas and light, or cloud-like entities drifting in the atmospheres of giant planets. Moreover, a truly advanced civilization might not remain confined to the frail biological bodies that evolution gave them. We humans are already dipping our toes into merging technology with our bodies, from wearable electronics to brain-computer interfaces. It's conceivable that aliens thousands or millions of years beyond us have taken this much further. They might have cyborg bodies, or they may have digitized their consciousness entirely, living as information patterns in vast supercomputers. In that case, their bodies could be distributed networks of machines spread across a planet or even multiple worlds. To us, such an existence would be as unfathomable as our modern digital society would seem to a medieval farmer. When we try to picture interactions with such advanced beings, it can be both humbling and unsettling. Arthur C. Clarke, the science fiction author, once remarked, "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic." It's a fitting observation. The feats of a civilization, even a few centuries beyond our own, might indeed appear miraculous to us. If an alien society were 1,000,000 years older than humanity, the gap is hard to fathom. Their knowledge of the universe could be so complete, and their control over natural forces so masterful, that we would struggle to even recognize their activities as technology. They could perhaps manipulate spacetime or harness quantum phenomena in ways that render distance almost irrelevant. They might communicate through methods we cannot yet detect. Perhaps they converse not with radio at all, but via neutrinos, gravity waves, or quantum signals. To our current technology, such communications would be effectively invisible, indistinguishable from the cosmic silence. For all we know, they could be conversing all around us, and we would not realize it. If such civilizations exist in our galaxy, one question is how they regard the universe, and possibly us. Would they be explorers and colonizers, eagerly reaching out to new worlds? Or would they be contemplative, choosing to observe quietly and not interfere? Some scientists speculate that truly advanced intelligences could have motivations far different from those of younger species. If resources and survival are no longer concerns for them, perhaps their focus turns inward, to art, knowledge, or realms of thought we cannot imagine. Others suggest that expansion might continue indefinitely, that life has an inherent drive to fill every niche. In that scenario, one might expect a galaxy teeming with evidence of cosmic engineers. Perhaps advanced beings would have transformed planets or built monumental structures around many stars. So far, we have seen no clear evidence of such grand transformations, which adds a layer of mystery. Another possibility is that the most advanced intelligences have essentially turned away from the physical universe, immersing themselves in perfect virtual realities of their own creation. If a species can simulate paradise or any conceivable experience, it may retreat into those inner worlds and lose interest in the external cosmos. For such beings, the wider galaxy might hold little allure, left pristine and unaltered by their hands. In that scenario, we wouldn't detect them at all, because their endeavours take place in realms we cannot observe. Another possibility is that they abide by a kind of galactic etiquette, a rule of non-interference. They might watch emerging civilizations like ours with curiosity, but choose not to interfere or reveal themselves, allowing us to develop naturally. In this scenario, often dubbed the zoo hypothesis, humanity could be like animals in a cosmic zoo or nature preserve. We would be observed from afar by higher beings who have decided not to disturb our development. Of course, not all imaginings of contact are comforting. Some thinkers have warned that meeting a far superior civilization could be as traumatic for us as the arrival of European colonists was for the indigenous peoples of the Americas. Perhaps advanced aliens, if they are aware of us, deliberately refrain from overt contact for our protection. They might realize that the cultural shock of encountering them would be devastating for our society, or perhaps they have more self-serving reasons to stay hidden. For instance, they could be quietly extracting resources in ways subtle enough not to reveal themselves, or observing us as part of some grand experiment. These darker musings underscore how little we can truly know. Depending on how we fill in the blanks, the galactic neighbours we imagine often reflect our own hopes and fears. Despite the uncertainties, there is something optimistic in pondering advanced alien life. The very idea that other intelligences have overcome the hurdles that lie before us, war, environmental collapse, technological mishaps, and gone on to thrive for millennia or longer, suggests it's possible to navigate those challenges. It implies that the story of the cosmos includes chapters far beyond our current chapter, with achievements we might one day reach. Perhaps, in the vastness of space, there are civilizations that have found ways to live in harmony with themselves and their environment, having outgrown aggression and scarcity. They might act as the universe's quiet guardians, intervening only subtly, if at all, or simply serving as inspiration that intelligent life can persevere through the ages. On the other hand, the silence we hear when we listen for voices among the stars could mean that advanced life is exceedingly rare or short-lived. If we are alone in having reached our present stage, or if most civilizations inevitably self-destruct just as they become capable of communicating, then the cosmos might be largely devoid of galactic empires or federations. This possibility leads us to a profound mystery known as the Great Silence, or the Fermi paradox. If life is out there in abundance, why do we hear nothing? Our imaginings of cosmic civilizations must confront this eerie quiet. Could it be that advanced beings are out there, but choosing not to shout across the stars? Or is there truly no one else reaching back when we call out? Until evidence tilts one way or the other, we live in the question. Each year, our instruments improve, allowing us to probe a little deeper into the cosmos. We also continue to send out our own messages, from interstellar probes bearing plaques and golden records to the unintended leakage of radio and television signals into space, announcing that a technological civilization exists here on Earth. Perhaps one day, when we least expect it, a reply will arrive. A sudden signal, a distant beacon, or even a craft appearing in our skies. It might begin as subtly as a faint blip in a telescope's data, or as dramatically as a ship descending through the clouds. Or maybe contact will never come, and the stars will remain silent to us, as we have been to them. For now, all we can do is ponder and persevere. The great silence of the galaxy is not proof of emptiness. It may simply be a challenge we have yet to overcome, or a mystery we have yet to understand. Are we truly alone, the sole bearers of consciousness in this vast expanse? Or are we one among many, perhaps observed from afar by others still waiting to greet us? Either possibility carries a profound responsibility. Until we find the answer, the night sky above remains silent and full of secrets. For as long as human beings have gazed at the stars, we have wondered if somewhere in that vast darkness, someone might be gazing back at us. It's a question that has tugged at our collective imagination in quiet moments under the night sky. In earlier times, we could only guess at what might be out there. But now, our curiosity has new tools. The modern age has given us eyes that never blink and ears that never tire, pointed toward the cosmos. With each technological advance, we turn our instruments heavenward, hopeful, patient, and determined to find any sign that we are not alone, any hint that Earth might be under observation from afar. High above the Earth's surface, a silent sentinel drifts through space with an unblinking eye. It is a space telescope, a marvel of human ingenuity, patiently scanning the heavens. In the vacuum of orbit, free from the distortion of Earth's atmosphere, it can see further and more clearly than any observer on the ground. Night and day have little meaning for this machine. It operates in perpetual night, always watching, always collecting light from distant stars and galaxies. It was built primarily to study the cosmos, to explore nebulae and search for new worlds. But in its tireless observations, it might also catch something unexpected, a hint of alien technology shining from across the light years. Far beyond the reach of any human eye, these telescopes inspect distant planets circling other suns. Over the past decade, missions like Kepler have revealed thousands of these exoplanets, some potentially Earth-like. With each discovery, astronomers pore over the data, looking for anomalies that might hint at something more than a natural world. A planet that dims its star's light in an odd pattern could raise eyebrows. Is it a cluster of artificial satellites passing in front, casting strange shadows? Or perhaps an enormous construct orbiting the star, momentarily blocking its light? These questions sound like science fiction, yet they are asked in earnest as we comb through the light curves of far-off stars. The James Webb Space Telescope, with its golden segmented mirror glinting against the darkness, is one of our newest eyes on the universe. It not only captures breathtaking images of galaxies and nebulae, but also peers into the atmospheres of exoplanets. When a planet passes in front of its star, a delicate fraction of starlight filters through the planet's atmospheric veil, and Webb can dissect that light. It looks for the subtle fingerprints of molecules, perhaps water vapor, oxygen, or methane, chemicals that might indicate life. But scientists have gone a step further. They also watch for the telltale signs of technology. Imagine a distant world where industry has flourished. Its skies might carry traces of gases that nature alone seldom produces. Perhaps a faint whiff of chlorofluorocarbons, the kind of refrigerant chemicals humans once used, could drift in the alien air. Or an unusual excess of nitrogen dioxide, a byproduct of combustion engines and power plants. Webb's instruments are sensitive enough that one day, catching a chemical oddity in a far-off atmosphere could reveal the unintended signature of a civilization at work. Not all techno-signatures would be written in the language of chemistry. Some could be visible directly, if our telescopes are lucky enough. Picture a rocky planet about the size of Earth, cloaked in night as it turns away from its sun. If that planet harbors an advanced species, its night side might twinkle with artificial light, city lights shining out into space. For now, such distant glimmers are incredibly faint, far beyond the reach of all but our wildest dreams of detection. But researchers have pondered how we might notice them. When a planet like that swings behind its star from our viewpoint, there is a moment when its dark hemisphere faces us fully, just before it vanishes in starlight. If the civilization's illumination were bright and widespread enough, a telescope might catch a tiny, unusual increase in the combined light, a subtle bump that whispers, "There are lights on in the darkness." It would be a clear, thrilling sign, not just life, but life that knows the light and has tamed it against the night. The search for these signatures has led scientists to creative ideas. Could we detect the very satellites orbiting an alien world? A sufficiently advanced planet might be encircled by swarms of satellites, communications relays, observation posts, countless devices forming a faint ring. If such a bracelet of technology were dense enough, it might dim a star's light in a telltale way as the planet and its satellites transit. Telescopes like Kepler and TESS, designed to notice the slight dip in a star's brightness when a planet crosses in front, could in theory pick out an extra wink of darkness from an accompanying ring of objects. It's a subtle, ghostly signature that would require sifting through enormous amounts of data. But it's a reminder that no avenue is considered too far-fetched in this search. Every bit of light that reaches a telescope's detector carries a potential message. It could be the presence of alien oceans, or forests, or perhaps highways lit up at midnight and machines orbiting a distant globe. Much of this search is happening quietly in the background of other astronomical work. When a space telescope observes a star to learn about its planets, or measures a galaxy's light, that same data could harbor a techno-signature without anyone noticing at first. Only by reanalyzing it with fresh eyes, or with clever algorithms, might an anomaly jump out. In recent years, researchers have begun to re-examine mountains of archival observations from past missions, hunting for an unexpected spike of infrared light here, or an odd spectral line there. They know that the chances of quick success are remote. Months or years can pass with nothing but mundane results. Yet another dip caused by a planet, another spectrum showing familiar chemical signatures of uninhabited worlds. And yet, they persevere. The enormity of the question, whether we have cosmic company, drives them on. In quiet moments, one might imagine the profound weight of being the first to recognize an alien signal in the data. That anticipation, however faint, is enough to keep humanity's eyes on the skies, night after night, year after year. There was a time not long ago when even discussing such possibilities openly was considered far-fetched. Astronomers whispered about alien megastructures or artificial signals with caution, worried about their reputations. The search for little green men, as it was mockingly called, sat at the fringes of respectable science. But as the decades passed, the discovery of planet after planet changed perspectives. It's now undeniable that the galaxy is teeming with worlds, some of them potentially like our own. With that realization, the stigma has begun to fade. NASA scientists and university researchers convene to talk about technosignatures, a deliberately sober term that encompasses all these traces of alien technology. Papers are published, conferences held, and the attitude has shifted from ridicule to curiosity. If advanced civilizations are out there, why not try to find evidence of their works? The search has blossomed into a serious, methodical effort. And so the great telescopes continue their vigil, capturing starlight and sifting it for secrets, with humanity's hopes riding on every photon that arrives from the dark. These technological eyes do not work alone. Around the world and beyond it, a network of instruments complements their gaze, covering other parts of the spectrum. Some detectors search for brief but powerful bursts of light, perhaps a laser flash from an alien beacon. Others quietly monitor high-energy skies for patterns in gamma rays or X-rays on the off chance that an ultra-advanced civilization might use exotic physics we have yet to understand. The philosophy is simple. Look everywhere, all the time, and leave no wavelength unexamined. It is as if humanity, unsure where a clue might appear, has decided to watch for anything and everything unusual in the cosmic arena. That vigilance spans the entire electromagnetic rainbow, from the longest radio hum to the quickest gamma-ray flicker. Each anomaly is noted and studied carefully, because in this quest, any flicker or whisper might be the one that reveals a watcher's presence. And more eyes are yet to come. In the near future, even larger telescopes will take up the search. Some will be based on Earth, giant observatories with mirrors 30 or 40 meters across, equipped with advanced optics to cancel out the blur of our atmosphere. Others will sail in space, perhaps accompanied by star-shade spacecraft, to block out a star's glare and reveal the faint glow of planets directly. These upcoming instruments promise to show us details we've never seen. Cloud patterns on alien worlds, the glint of sunlight on extraterrestrial oceans, maybe even the silhouette of continents. With such clarity might also come the chance to spot the unexpected, a straight-edge structure where only randomness should reign, or a spark of illumination on a dark hemisphere. As our tools improve, our questions only sharpen. Is someone out there building something grand enough for us to see? Are there lights in the sky of another world? Every enhancement in our technology renews our hope that if the watchers are out there, hiding in plain sight among the stars, we might at last catch a glimpse of them. It's a task that requires a special kind of patience. In observatories and data centers, researchers often work through the night, eyes fixed on computer screens filled with graphs and spectral lines. They are searching for tiny deviations and blips that might stand out from the noise. Many of these scientists speak of the search in almost poetic terms, like listening for a faint tune in a roaring hurricane, or trying to spot a single candle flicker on a distant mountain. They know that quick success is unlikely. Yet the profound importance of the question drives them. In the still hours before dawn, one might feel the weight of possibly being the first to know we're not alone. That sliver of possibility, however remote, keeps them at their posts, scanning and analyzing, night after night, year after year. Even as our telescopes capture the cosmos in images, another sense remains alert for signs of watchers. Our ears, so to speak, pressed against the void. Decade after decade, large radio dishes on Earth have been pointed at the sky, listening for any whisper of something unnatural among the static. One day, we might scan all the sky, all the time, as some have dreamed, a true cosmic observatory where not a single strange burst or carrier wave will escape notice. Until then, the operators at the radio telescopes, the analysts poring over data, and the algorithms humming along on supercomputers remain vigilant. They are straining to hear a needle scratch of intelligence amid the cosmic static. It could happen tomorrow, or it might take centuries, but they listen on, believing that if someone out there ever sends a message, intentionally or not, we have to be ready to hear it. Even as the telescopes watch for glimmers, an equally intense search is taking place in a different domain, the realm of radio waves and signals. Where a telescope's camera searches for a glimmer, a radio receiver searches for a pulse, a tone, or a coded transmission. This effort to scan the airwaves for alien signals is one of humanity's longest-running quests, and it is steeped in both ingenuity and longing. It's often called the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, but to the people involved, it can feel like trying to catch the faintest of whispers in a howling wind. The story of this radio search began in earnest in the middle of the 20th century. In 1960, a young astronomer named Frank Drake cradled a pair of headphones in a control room in Greenbank, West Virginia, listening to the eerie crackle of cosmic static. He had pointed a 25-meter radio telescope at two nearby stars, Epsilon Eridani and Tau Ceti, in the hopes of detecting a deliberate signal. This experiment, whimsically named Project Ozma after a queen in a fairy tale, was humanity's first attempt to eavesdrop on the conversations of the cosmos. Drake listened patiently for weeks, tuning through frequencies, ears straining for anything that broke the monotonous hiss. In the end, Project Ozma heard only silence and the natural hum of space. But it marked the beginning of a new kind of exploration. It was as if we had, for the first time, put a seashell to the shore of the universe, trying to discern a voice in the surf. In the years and decades that followed Drake's pioneering effort, the search on the airwaves intensified. Radio telescopes grew larger and more sensitive, and electronic detectors became more sophisticated. What once required tuning by hand through one channel at a time evolved into systems that could listen to millions of channels simultaneously. Astronomers focused their search around frequencies they thought might be universal watering holes for cosmic communicators. One popular choice was the frequency of neutral hydrogen, about 1420 MHz, a naturally quiet band where hydrogen atoms emit a gentle radio glow. They reasoned that any scientifically knowledgeable civilization would be aware of this frequency, making it a good common channel to hail across the stars. And fortuitously, international agreements on Earth keep this band clear of our own transmissions, creating a quiet window to the galaxy. So telescopes were aimed skyward, and receivers were tuned to that special frequency, and many around it, waiting for anything that stood out against the cosmic background noise. Every so often, the quiet vigil of these radio telescopes has been broken by a moment of excitement. One of the most famous incidents occurred on an August night in 1977. At Ohio State University's Big Ear Radio Observatory, a giant listening dish, a strong, focused signal suddenly rose above the background noise. It was a narrow-band signal, occupying a very specific frequency, and it was extraordinarily intense, about 30 times louder than the typical hiss of space. For 72 seconds, the Big Ear recorded this anomaly as the Earth's rotation swept the telescope's view across the sky. Then, just as abruptly as it appeared, the signal vanished. When an astronomer checked the computer printout the next day, he was so astonished by the numbers that he scribbled, "Wow!" in red pen next to the data. That exclamation became the signal's nickname, the wow signal, and it has intrigued researchers ever since. Here was a signal that in many ways matched what one might expect from an interstellar transmission. Strong, narrow, at the magic frequency of hydrogen. It appeared to come from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius and did not carry the hallmarks of any known natural source. It never repeated, despite numerous follow-up scans. To this day, the WOW signal remains an unsolved mystery. Some scientists have proposed exotic natural explanations, perhaps a one-time cosmic event like a flare from a magnetar striking a hydrogen cloud. Others quietly hold out hope that it really was a call from an alien beacon, intercepted once by chance and never again. It was just one brief whisper, frustratingly ephemeral, but it was enough to keep the flame of curiosity burning brightly in the SETI community. Over the years, the quest to hear from other civilizations continued to mature. What began with one man and one telescope expanded into global collaborations. In the United States, a dedicated network of radio dishes called the Allen Telescope Array was built in the high desert of California, designed to constantly survey the sky for unusual signals. Funding ebbed and flowed, and for a while the search relied on the passion of private donors and the dedication of a handful of scientists. But in the past decade, a surge of new support invigorated the field. A project named Breakthrough Listen, backed by generous funding, harnessed some of the world's most powerful radio telescopes, including the giant Green Bank Telescope in West Virginia and the Parkes Observatory in Australia, to conduct the most comprehensive listening campaign in history. Night after night, these facilities sweep across targets, nearby stars, the center of our galaxy, even distant galaxies, tuning across billions of frequencies in search of that one anomalous tone or pattern. The data volumes are enormous, and increasingly astronomers employ artificial intelligence to sift the wheat from the chaff, hoping an AI might catch a faint pattern that a human could miss. In this era of advanced searches, a few intriguing false alarms have come and gone. One example came only a few years ago, when observers with Breakthrough Listen thought they'd found something peculiar in the direction of Proxima Centauri, the star nearest our Sun. It was a narrow, persistent radio tone that didn't match any known natural source. For a brief period, excitement bubbled that perhaps we'd stumbled upon a message from our cosmic next-door neighbor. However, further analysis revealed that it was almost certainly Earth's own interference, a stray signal from human technology bouncing around the atmosphere, mimicking an extraterrestrial whisper. It was a letdown, but also a valuable lesson. The incident underscored how careful scientists must be in vetting every candidate signal. Our planet is now so noisy with radio chatter that distinguishing an alien beacon from terrestrial noise is like picking a single voice out of a stadium full of shouting fans. Meanwhile, new leviathans of listening have come online. In the remote mountains of China, the 500-meter Aperture Spherical Telescope, or FAST, now rests in a natural basin, staring at the sky. FAST is the largest single-dish radio telescope ever built, and its sheer size allows it to detect incredibly faint signals. Among its many scientific missions, it has joined the hunt for extraterrestrial communications. Using its massive ear, FAST can scan swathes of the sky quickly, and its engineers have developed systems to filter out local radio noise, giving it a pristine window to the cosmos. Looking ahead, even more ambitious instruments like the planned square-kilometer array promise to multiply our listening power. With thousands of antennas working in unison, the square-kilometer array will be able to survey huge portions of the sky faster than ever, perhaps finally capturing that elusive hello from the dark. All this effort, all these ears open to the universe, have so far met with one profound result: silence. An immense, heavy silence that some have called eerie and others awe-inspiring in its implication. Enrico Fermi's famous question rings out: where is everybody? If the cosmos is rich with life, why haven't we heard even a whisper from another civilization by now? This puzzlement is often referred to as the Great Silence, or the Fermi paradox. There is no definitive answer. Perhaps intelligent life is exceedingly rare, and we truly are alone in our corner of the galaxy. Or maybe civilizations are out there, but choose not to broadcast, whether out of caution or simply different behavior. After all, Earth itself has grown quieter as our technology advances, and we move from loud TV transmissions to fiber optic cables. It's also conceivable that advanced beings communicate in forms we're not equipped to detect, using exotic particles or dimensions of physics beyond our understanding. Another haunting possibility is that they are indeed out there and transmitting, but we've just missed them so far, our searches glancing over the right signal at the wrong time. Whatever the reason, the sky's deep quiet has not dissuaded us. If anything, it has made the searchers even more determined. Each year, our listening techniques improve, covering more sky and more frequencies with greater sensitivity. The search is steadily transitioning from isolated experiments to continuous monitoring. One day, we might scan all the sky, all the time, as some have dreamed, a true continuous vigil where not a single signal goes unnoticed. Until then, the scientists at the radio observatories and the software combing through petabytes of data remain on alert. They are straining to hear the faintest hint of a melody in the cosmic static. It could happen tomorrow, or it might take centuries. But they listen on, believing that if someone out there ever sends a message, we will be ready to hear it. While listening has been the primary strategy, humanity has on occasion tried the opposite approach, sending a cosmic greeting in hopes that someone might be listening on the other side. One famous instance took place in 1974, when the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico, then home to the largest radio dish on Earth, beamed a deliberate message toward a distant star cluster called M13. It was a brief burst of ones and zeros, arranged to convey a pictorial message about who we are, the structure of our DNA, a sketch of the human form, our solar system, and the radio dish that sent the message. This Arecibo message was largely symbolic. M13 lies 25,000 light-years away, so our signal will take millennia to arrive, and any reply would be tens of thousands of years in coming. But the act itself was a statement of optimism, a cosmic message in a bottle cast into the galactic ocean. Since then, a few other attempts have been made to send announcements into space, including simple digital greetings aimed at nearby stars, and even a golden record launched aboard the Voyager probes, filled with sounds and images of Earth. Each effort sparks debate. Some scientists wonder if advertising our presence is wise when we don't know who might be out there. Yet others argue that an advanced civilization likely already knows we're here from our accidental radio and television leakage over the past century. Either way, these efforts to reach out highlight an important truth. We aren't just passive observers. We yearn to connect. So even as we keep our radio telescopes trained on the sky, waiting for a call, we also send the occasional postcard from Earth, hoping that if someone is out there, they'll understand the message and maybe even send one back. In our search for cosmic watchers, there is yet another avenue, one that doesn't rely on catching signals or messages at all. Instead, it looks for unmistakable footprints of technology writ large across the stars. If a civilization is truly ancient and advanced, its activities might produce observable changes on an astronomical scale. Among these, one idea stands out for its audacity and its potential visibility: the concept of alien megastructures. Could we detect the work of beings who build on a planetary or even stellar scale? The most famous of these hypothetical megastructures is known as a Dyson sphere. Back in the 1960s, the physicist Freeman Dyson speculated about the future of energy-hungry civilizations. He reasoned that if a society kept advancing, its energy needs might eventually outgrow what a planet alone can provide. Such a civilization might attempt to capture a significant portion of its star's light to power itself. To do that, they could build a vast construct encompassing the star, not necessarily a solid shell, but perhaps a dense swarm of orbiting solar collectors or satellites soaking up starlight. To an outside observer like us, a star enclosed by a Dyson swarm would look peculiar. Much of the star's visible light would be intercepted, making the star appear dimmer or oddly fluctuating. And all that gathered energy wouldn't just vanish. It would be used and then re-radiated as heat. A star wrapped in such technology might glow brightly in infrared wavelengths, like an ember smouldering under a blanket. Dyson's suggestion was essentially this: if such things exist, we might find them by looking for stars with too little visible light and too much infrared. For a moment, imagine what such a megastructure would look like. A star, once shining freely into space, is now surrounded by a labyrinth of technology. It might not be a solid shell, more likely a vast swarm of satellites and habitats, each soaking up solar energy. From outside, much of the star's brilliance is trapped and converted, so an observer light years away would see only a dim, reddish glow seeping out. It would resemble an ember, muffled and faint, where a vibrant star should be. Yet inside that sphere of machines, there could be unimaginable abundance. The interior surfaces, or orbiting habitats, would catch the sunlight directly, providing illumination and energy for perhaps trillions of beings. They might dwell on the inner faces of rotating habitats that simulate gravity, or in enormous artificial worlds arranged in rings and layers. An entire stellar system turned into living space. It's a vision at the far frontier of possibility. If such a thing exists anywhere in our galaxy, it would be a beacon of intelligence by its sheer scale. Even without intending to communicate, the builders would have left a spectral fingerprint that could be seen across interstellar distances. Encouraged by the mystery of these ideas, and armed with better data, researchers have broadened the hunt for alien megastructures. Starting in the 1980s, they began scanning the skies for the thermal whispers of possible Dyson spheres. The Infrared Astronomical Satellite, IRAS, conducted one of the first all-sky surveys and turned up many sources of infrared radiation. Most were dust clouds, young star systems, or galaxies brimming with star formation. None screamed artificial, but the seed was planted, and the search continued through later missions, like the Wide Field Infrared Survey Explorer, WISE. Researchers wrote algorithms to sift these catalogues for oddities, stars that were too quiet in visible light, yet oddly loud in infrared. If a Dyson sphere or swarm were out there, its signature might be hiding in that sea of data. One particularly famous case arrived in 2015 and captured the public's imagination. The Kepler Space Telescope, which monitored stars for tiny dips in brightness caused by transiting planets, found a star that didn't behave like anything seen before. This star, catalogued as KIC 8462852 and later nicknamed Tabby's star, would sometimes dip by a few percent, other times by over 20%, in irregular, seemingly random fashion. No known planet could cause such dramatic dimming, not unless it was unbelievably large, or there were many of them in a complex orbit. For a while, people wondered if we were witnessing the effects of a gigantic alien project, maybe a partial Dyson swarm, or some other structure intermittently blocking the star. Scientists around the world pointed their instruments at Tabby's star hoping to catch more clues. Follow-up studies suggested that the dimming might be wavelength dependent. The star faded more at some colors than others, which is a strong sign of dust rather than solid objects. The leading hypothesis became that a huge cloud of dust, or debris, perhaps from a disintegrating comet or a shredded planet, was orbiting the star and occasionally obscuring it. Over time, the star's brightness returned closer to normal, consistent with dust dispersing. The exotic megastructure theory lost favor, yet it was never completely disproved, just deemed unlikely. Still, Tabby's star had done something important. It opened minds to the possibility that alien engineering, if it exists, might announce itself in strange light patterns. It also showed that nature can sometimes masquerade as something artificial, reminding us to be cautious but curious. Encouraged by that mystery and others, astronomers have identified a handful of intriguing candidates that warrant a closer look. For example, one recent study combed through data within 1,000 light-years of Earth and found about 7 small, dim stars, red dwarfs, that seemed far brighter in infrared than expected. These were old stars, not youthful ones that normally have warm, dusty disks. In fact, some of these stars appeared dozens of times brighter in the infrared than they should be. The scientists scratched their heads. What natural process could cause that? No obvious explanation fit. The tantalizing suggestion was floated that maybe, just maybe, these stars could have a web of orbiting structures, perhaps a partial Dyson swarm, intercepting some starlight and re-radiating heat. In another survey, over 50 more stars, some similar to our Sun, showed unusual excesses of infrared emission. There are natural possibilities to consider. Maybe each star has an unusually thick asteroid belt, or is coincidentally lined up with a distant galaxy emitting infrared. But the fact remains, these stars are weird enough that an artificial cause can't be entirely ruled out. They have joined a watch list of sorts. These candidates will be observed further, especially with new instruments like the James Webb Space Telescope, which can take a more detailed look at their spectra and flickering behavior. If one of them truly harbors a megastructure, additional data might reveal inconsistencies with any natural origin. So far, no candidate has graduated from curious anomaly to confirmed megastructure. Nature has a way of offering surprises that mimic the extraordinary, only to turn out ordinary upon closer examination. But the very act of looking for alien megastructures has expanded our horizons. It forces us to imagine what's possible in the universe, and to recognize that even our grandest engineering projects are dwarfed by what a truly advanced civilization might achieve. If one day a real Dyson sphere or some other colossal construct is identified, the implications would be staggering. Without a single word exchanged, we would know for certain that we share the galaxy with intelligence far beyond our own. It would be a silent revelation writ in starlight and infrared heat, a monument visible across light years that quietly proclaims, "We were here. We harnessed a star." Until that day, astronomers will keep scrutinizing the skies for anything that defies natural explanation. Each unexplained excess of heat and each bizarre flicker of a distant sun will remain a potential clue. And this search reminds us of the incredible scale on which life might play out among the stars. A scale that leaves us humbled, yet more determined than ever to find those watchers, if they exist, who have bent starlight to their will. Interestingly, scientists have also mused about detecting large artificial shapes directly through their transits. A natural planet usually produces a symmetrical dip in a star's brightness, a smooth curve as it covers and then uncovers the stellar disk. But imagine catching a transit signal that doesn't match any natural shape. A planet causes a rounded dip, but a colossal triangular craft, or a network of platforms, might create a jagged, uneven light curve. So far, no unmistakable signature like that has appeared. Still, researchers have developed pattern recognition tools to scan the troves of star data for anything that looks unnatural. Even the geometry of a shadow can be a clue. Across all these searches of distant stars and signals, there remains another intriguing possibility, that an advanced watcher might not simply stay at home waiting to be noticed. What if they come to us? For generations, this idea was left to the realm of science fiction. But in recent years, reality has given us a reason to consider it seriously. We have begun to detect mysterious visitors from beyond our solar system, interstellar objects passing through, like messengers from other stars. And whenever one appears, we can't help but wonder if it's purely natural, or if it might be something more. In late 2017, astronomers in Hawaii spotted a faint point of light moving rapidly across the sky. It was unlike the usual asteroids they monitor, coming in at a strange angle and tremendous speed. Within days, calculations revealed something astonishing. This object was not orbiting the Sun at all. It was just passing through. It had entered our solar system from interstellar space, looped around the Sun, and was already headed back out into the void. We had never seen anything like it. The object was named Oumuamua, a Hawaiian word meaning scout or messenger from afar, an apt title for the first visitor we've caught from another star. Telescopes worldwide swung to observe Oumuamua during the brief window it was visible. What they saw only deepened the mystery. It appeared to be small, perhaps a few hundred meters in length, but its brightness varied dramatically every few hours, as if it were tumbling end over end and had an extremely elongated shape. Some scientists likened it to a cigar. Others argued it might be more like a thin pancake or wafer. Stranger still, unlike a comet, it showed no halo of gas or dust under the Sun's warmth. It seemed inert, like an asteroid, yet analysis suggested it was accelerating slightly, as if a gentle push was acting on it. Comets get that push from vapor jets, when ice sublimates into gas, but no such jets were detected on Oumuamua. The discovery of Oumuamua sent ripples of excitement and puzzlement through the scientific community. Here was an actual interstellar traveler, a piece of another star system in our grasp, and we barely had time to study it. It was moving fast, and within a few weeks it had faded from view, leaving more questions than answers. Researchers proposed various natural explanations. One hypothesis suggested Oumuamua might be composed of exotic ices that don't produce visible gas, perhaps solid hydrogen or nitrogen, which could evaporate without a detectable tail, giving the object a slight thrust. Another idea was that it was a fragment of a shattered dwarf planet, a sliver of frozen nitrogen from the surface of some Pluto-like world, knocked off in an ancient collision and sent wandering between the stars. As that nitrogen ice vaporized in sunlight, it could account for the subtle acceleration. Yet amid these scientific conjectures, a more daring possibility was also voiced. What if Oumuamua was not natural at all? What if it was some kind of probe or craft from another civilization? Usually such talk would be relegated to the fringes, but the peculiarities of Oumuamua made it hard to dismiss. One renowned astronomer pointed out that the non-gravitational acceleration could be explained if Oumuamua were extremely thin, like a light sail, a type of propulsion device that uses radiation pressure from starlight. Perhaps, he speculated, it was a piece of alien technology, maybe a defunct light sail from an ancient probe. This hypothesis was met with healthy skepticism by most experts, who felt it stretched the data too far beyond what we knew. They countered that just because we hadn't seen an object like Oumuamua before didn't mean it was unnatural. Nature often surprises us with forms we haven't seen yet. Nonetheless, the discussion was notable. For the first time, the alien probe idea entered the scientific mainstream conversation, not as a claim of certainty, but as one of the possibilities to consider. As debates simmered over Oumuamua, the cosmos provided another clue. In late 2019, a second interstellar interloper was discovered, this time by an amateur astronomer in Crimea. It was designated 2I Borisov, 2I marking the second interstellar object. Unlike Oumuamua, Borisov announced itself clearly as a comet. It had a visible tail of gas and dust and behaved much like comets from our own solar system. Borisov swooped around the Sun and then continued on its way, on a trajectory that proved it came from far beyond the Sun's influence. Scientists eagerly studied its composition, finding it rich in carbon monoxide, more so than typical local comets, hinting that it might have formed around a cooler, redder star than our Sun. In all other respects, Borisov seemed natural. It reassured astronomers that interstellar objects are indeed out there and can be quite similar to the space rocks we know. In contrast, Oumuamua remained an outlier, no coma, odd shape, and an unexplained push. The tale of these two visitors, one enigmatic and one familiar, has expanded our thinking about what drifts between the stars. At minimum, they show that pieces of distant solar systems do find their way across the light years, probably ejected by gravitational dances in their home systems. But they also remind us that our detection capabilities have only just opened this door. Oumuamua was likely not the first interstellar object to pay us a visit, only the first we noticed. Now that we know how to find them, future surveys, like the powerful Vera Rubin Observatory coming online soon, are expected to catch many more. Among those, we might find objects even stranger than Oumuamua. And who knows, perhaps something that stands out as clearly artificial. The idea that an alien intelligence might send probes to other star systems has been contemplated for decades. In 1960, around the same time Radio SETI was born, a scientist named Ronald Bracewell speculated about autonomous probes that could be sent to monitor or even communicate with emerging civilizations. These hypothetical machines are sometimes called Bracewell probes. The concept makes a certain sense. A civilization might find it more efficient to send robotic observers than to beam signals across the void and hope someone is listening. Such a probe, upon reaching a target solar system, could quietly park itself in a stable orbit and watch for signs of life or technology. If Earth is being observed by such devices, they might be lurking in places where our own spacecraft seldom go, perhaps co-orbiting with Earth, hiding among the small asteroids that share our orbit, or stationed at gravitational balance points like the far side of the Moon, or the Lagrange points, where the gravity of Earth and Sun balances out. With the advent of modern surveys and better telescopes, scientists have actually begun to search these hiding spots, just in case. Telescopic scans of the Earth-Moon Lagrange points have been conducted to look for any unknown objects larger than a few meters. So far, nothing unusual has turned up, only darkness and the occasional speck of known space debris. Similarly, astronomers have catalogued many of the tiny asteroids near Earth's orbit to see if any show anomalies. All appear to be natural rocks. We haven't found any lurker probes silently drifting in our vicinity. But the fact that such searches are happening at all shows how our perspective has shifted. What once might have sounded like paranoia, the idea of hidden observers, is now considered a question worth a careful, empirical look. And then there are the truly wandering visitors like Oumuamua. If one were a probe, how would we know? One could imagine that an alien device sent to study an emerging civilization might not announce itself. It could fly by silently, perhaps even maneuver in subtle ways to explore multiple planets before departing. If Oumuamua had been actively observing, perhaps taking a peek at our inner solar system, it gave no obvious sign of it, at least none that our instruments could discern. But the very arrival of that object has galvanized new thinking. There's now a project, led by curious researchers, aiming to systematically watch for the next interstellar visitor and be ready to scrutinize it from every angle. Some have even drawn up preliminary plans for an intercept mission. If we detect another Oumuamua-like object well before it arrives, we could potentially launch a spacecraft to chase it. The concept, dubbed Project Lyra, would use a fast propulsion system to catch up to the visitor, take close-up images, and maybe even send a probe to sample it. It's an audacious plan, likely requiring future technology or a very fortuitously slow target. But just having such plans on the table signals a shift. Humanity is preparing, at least hypothetically, for direct engagement with something alien, be it rock or robot. In addition to larger interstellar objects, researchers identified something smaller but intriguing. A meteor that struck Earth's atmosphere in 2014, which, based on its speed and path, appears to have come from beyond our solar system. This fireball exploded over the Pacific Ocean. Unlike Oumuamua or Borisov, it actually collided with Earth. Recently, an expedition combed the ocean floor at the impact zone and recovered tiny metallic spherules believed to be fragments of that meteor. If confirmed, it means we quite literally have pieces of another star system in our hands. So far, these fragments look like natural alloys, not manufactured artifacts. But it's a reminder that interstellar visitors can even reach our planet's surface. It also shows our growing ability to detect and even retrieve material from beyond the solar system. Who knows? If one day a truly anomalous object fell to Earth or passed close by, we might be able to analyze its remains or intercept it, and finally determine whether it was just a peculiar rock or something crafted by intelligence. All of these efforts, the vigilant telescopes, the listening antennas, the analysis of strange stars, and the tracking of interstellar wanderers, form a tapestry of exploration aimed at answering a profound question. Is someone, or something, watching Earth? So far, the tapestry has no clear image, just tantalizing threads that hint and whisper, but do not yet reveal an observer. We have not found a glaring beacon in the sky saying hello, nor a colossal construct eclipsing a star in unmistakable greeting. But we have learned to look in ways we never could before. We've learned that silence itself can be informative, and that the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. It may simply mean we must listen longer, or in new ways. There is a certain poetic symmetry in this endeavor. In searching for those who might be watching us, we have become watchers of the universe. We scan, we listen, we catalogue and imagine. Each new telescope, each new algorithm, each new survey expands our ability to perceive the faintest traces of others. Perhaps the watchers, if they exist, are exceedingly subtle or far away. Perhaps they abide by a cosmic rule of quiet, observing from the shadows until we reach a certain threshold of advancement. Or maybe, just maybe, the reason we haven't found them yet is because we're among the first, and it will be our destiny to become the watchers for those who come after. As it stands now, the mystery remains. Our instruments will continue to sweep the skies. The next anomalous signal, the next odd light curve, the next interstellar object that tumbles into our solar system will be met with ready eyes and ears. And if one day we do detect that undeniable sign of an observing intelligence, It will change everything, turning what was once speculation into knowledge, however indirect. Until then, we live in the balance of possibilities. Under observation or under solitude, we cannot yet say. But we can say this: we are no longer passive. We are actively watching the skies, determined to find an answer. And the very act of searching draws us closer to the cosmos around us, watcher and watched, both waiting for the moment that the silence finally yields to a signal, and the long, lonely night lights up with confirmation that we are not alone.